I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you.
I'm disappointed in every one of you.
I kiss you on the mouth.
No, I'm not cool with that. Just, I'm sorry.
One more time.
I'm disappointed in every one of you.
I mean, I'm dealing with degenerate animals.
I'm disappointed in every one of you. Disappointed in every one of you.
All right, come on.
Honestly, I can't do it, man.
I'm disappointed in every one of you.
Let me tell you why.
It's gonna be all right, Nicky. Go ahead, shoot.
You just killed a fucking man.
What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, because you got nothing. You don't got a thing. Yeah, because you got nothing.
Lobito!
You got nothing.
I want to get out. I want to get out of this rat hole. I want to get online. I need
BDA boxing.
Welcome everybody to another Boxing Podcast, broadcasting to you live from the True North. This is your good friend Mr. BDA, and I sure am glad. That's right, sure I'm glad that everybody could be on board for this one, fellas. In this episode, we've got a fantastic one for you, as we are going to be looking at boxing's biggest stars and their threats, their biggest threats. We're going to try to determine that, and in doing so, we might get to the bottom of what are some of the best fights to make in the boxing world right now, because we already had some of the best fights last year, and people are scratching their heads going, well, what's next? Well, we might find out in this episode. Now, before we get down to the fun, let's get the business side of the way, fellas. You know the drill. If you want to donate a couple of shekels our way, you're certainly welcome to do so via the Buy Me a Coffee app, link in the description. You're also welcome to sign up to the Patreon for free. You get free content, and it always helps out when you sign up for it. So make sure to do that. I got about 3 videos in the pipeline, almost ready to go, so make sure to sign up for that. Don't forget, you can also check us out on Spotify, iTunes, and Spreaker at your leisure. And don't forget to hit the like, subscribe if you've yet to do so already. Let's give a big shout out to everybody in the chat. I'm talking about Windy City, Guerrero de la Info, Hannibal Munguia, King Bucho, Super Sardonic, Eparokua, Rampax Drunken Company, 10-4, Jay Perez, Drunk Irishman, Fighter Flight Boxing. We got Hard Recoil jumping in as well, Trooper 5131, Mars Boxeo, Kiki Dog Boxing, Alfredo Contreras, Double L, Super Sardonic, and many more people to come, I'm sure. Fellas, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. All right. Let me invite a couple of people over here, and then we'll see what we've got going. And then I'll try to explain again, just for posterity, the things that we got planned, what the point of this episode is. Hold on a second. I'm trying to... How come Bucho's not in this group? What's going on here? I got a bunch of groups and I don't see Bucho in it, so... All right. Hold on a second. All right. Now, before we continue, let me just read I think somebody just dropped a Buy Me a Coffee donation. And let's see what we got here. It's from Double L. Shout out to Double L for his contribution via the Buy Me a Coffee app. And he says, Tank's biggest threat of 2025 is the Baltimore Police Department and those who oppose NAMBLA. Oh, come on. Come on. That's a completely unnecessary, Double L. But you did pay for it, so legally I have to read your comment. But that doesn't mean we endorse it. Yeah, I think that has to do with the fact that, I don't know if people saw Tank Davis's latest tweet, one of his latest tweets. One is where he's smoking what appears to be marijuana in an elevator in front of a no smoking sign. So he really wants to get across the fact that he's a rebel. Meanwhile, at the same time, he's complaining, why does the judge have a hard-on for me? Well, I don't know, maybe because you're out of control. And then he posted another, I don't know if it was on Instagram or whatever, but he seems to have long, straight hair, which I don't think his phenotype is capable of creating. So I don't know what it was, but he looked kind of fruity, and people were making fun of him for that. All right, we've got Bucho and Chief joining us here. Guys, can you see the screen I'm sharing here?
One sec. All I see right now is the chat.
All right,
chat
fantastic.
room.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's loading.
Okay. Yeah, so just to remind people what this episode is going to be about, it's about boxing's biggest stars and their threats. We're going to try to analyze this and find out who exactly, or, what exactly can be the most, what's the word I'm looking for here, viable or threatening obstacle in front of some of these guys. Now, it's not just fighters. It's not just fellow fighters. Sometimes it can be a character flaw. Sometimes it can be bad management. It could be a lifestyle thing. I don't know. We're going to get into that. But it's not just other opponents. So that's what it's going to be clear once we get down to it. So without further ado, let's get started here with boxing's biggest stars and their biggest threats. Hold on a second. All right. So the first guy we're going to be looking at here, we're going to start in order of weight classes. Jesse Bam Rodriguez, now campaigning at super flyweight, recently took out one of the best guys of the past 10 years in that division. That's Juan Francisco Estrada. Previous to that, he beat up Sisraket Sorongvifsai. So some people have a high outlook on Bam Rodriguez to the point where, and I've said this before, I think he's being slightly overrated at this point because it seems like some people are saying, oh, there's nobody that can beat him. Nobody can give him a tough fight, let alone beat him. That's the things I'm hearing. That's the sentiment that's out there in regards to Jesse Bam Rodriguez, and I disagree. So I think there's a good opportunity to see, well, okay, let's figure it out and put it into more concrete terms. Who are his biggest threats? The first one would be, I think this is a logical one, Fernando Martinez, El Pumita. Martinez is undefeated, just like Jesse Bam Rodriguez. He's slightly older, whereas Bam Rodriguez is 24, El Pumita is already 33, which for little guys like this, it could be older, but he certainly didn't look all that old when he fought Ioka last year. Now, he was supposed to fight him at the end of last year, but of course that fight fell through like all the other Japanese fights near the end of the year. But be that as it may, hopefully they're going to reschedule it. And like I said, Fernando Martinez, 17-0, 9 knockouts. He's a ferocious fighter, high output. I think he hits harder than his record indicates because he moves guys when he hits them. Bam Rodriguez, on the other hand, 21-0 with 14 knockouts. And so far, with the exception of 2 fights, it's been easy sailing for him. So, guys, what do you think about Fernando Martinez? Is he one of the biggest threats? Any comments on this?
Well, I'm going back over the intangibles real quick. 5'2" and 64-inch reach for Martinez, and of course that's irrelevant if depending on the fighting style. But he just doesn't seem like he's a physical imposition on Jesse Rodriguez. I don't know a lot about him. I'm not going to lie. I know who he is. I know what he's done. But right now, it seems as if Jesse's in the position that he's his own worst enemy. He can have challenges from people, but after everything we've seen so far, he should be favored amongst everyone else, not just because he's beaten old war horses, but because how he's beaten them and the skills and power and everything he's beaten them with. He needs to be the front runner. He should be the front runner, and everyone else should be trying to raise their game up to see what they can do as compared to him. Based off of that, this guy obviously can pose a challenge because Ioka is no joke, and the fact he's able to defeat him in a unanimous decision in Japan shows volumes of what he's able to do. You don't usually beat a hometown favorite by unanimous decision in their home country if they're heavily favored and protected. And he beat him by wide scores, 117, 111, 120, basically 12-0, and then 116, 112. Now I'm just going off scorecards. I don't have an unofficial scorecard myself, but you don't get scores like that unless you really beat the champion in his hometown. Most places in the world, that's just the way it is. So he's obviously got something to bring to the game because he beat a fading champion, but by unanimously in his hometown. I said that. I can't stress that enough. So it's not going to be a walk in the park for Jesse, I imagine, but I don't know he should be looked at as anything other than still the favorite.
Yeah, I agree. Bucho, anything to add about that matchup?
Not really. I'm not even that savvy, in this division. I know him. I guess he's a threat, but I think Bam's just on another level. By the way, is my sound okay?
Crank it up a little bit more, please. Just a little bit more. All right.
Better?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Much better now. In fact, I think now.
I mean, everything you guys said, in my opinion, makes sense.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's one potential threat that we got there. Again, we're scanning the horizon here for threats for Jesse Bam Rodriguez. Let's go to this second threat, rather. And I think this is a much more dangerous guy. Junto Nakatani. Junto Nakatani currently campaigning one division above 118, that's bantamweight. Now, of course, the reason why he's a viable candidate or threat is because he moved up to 118 last year, thereabouts. So it wasn't that long ago that he was at super flyweight. In fact, I found the move a little bit premature. Nonetheless, Nakatani has quickly taken over the 118-pound division, and this dude is a problem for pretty much anybody within 115 or even 122. So much so that some people are saying he's a threat to Inoue, and we're going to get to that. Nakatani is 27 years old, 29-0, 22 knockouts, some of those big knockouts, by the way. He's 5'7.5", which is very tall and rangy for his weight class, or his, that horizon or that area of weight classes. And then on top of that, he can actually box. Very good timing, very good control of the distance. Only a couple of guys have been able to give him a bit of a good fight. And even then, it was clear that Nakatani won. Guys, I think Nakatani... well, actually, let me ask you, would you say he's a bigger threat than Fernando Martinez?
Bucho?
I would say yes. From what I've seen, he looks like the real deal. His last fight was pretty impressive. I'll just say yes. And he's in a higher weight, so.
True. But when you get guys that have the potential to be multi-division champions like Bam is, you wonder if they're going to go up one more and challenge themselves again. He's only 24, so, but he's short for even bantamweight. He's not tall for a bantamweight, even for that stature of guys that are usually a little shorter, skinnier, smaller, shorter reaches. Whereas Nakatani, on the other end, is extremely tall and rangy for, as BDA has already said. But he's the real deal. He can fight inside. He has the skill, the size, the power. Seems as if he's got the chin and the whereabouts to be able to roll with shots or block with his gloves when he sees them coming, to be able to fight on the inside with someone like Bam Rodriguez, especially at a weight division Bam's going to have to move into. Because I don't see Nakatani moving back down. He's young. I don't see him moving back down. Bam's going to have to go to him if that fight's going to be made. I don't see Bam being overly successful. I see Bam being as successful at that weight as Chocolito was at 115. He can compete there, but he's not going to dominate. He can win some fights, but he's not going to dominate. That's not his natural weight. It's because he's a special fighter. He'll be able to give these guys a run for their money and beat the lower tier guys. The upper tier guys are just too big for him. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
No, I'm just finishing up with the bigger. That's a weight class that's going to be at that cusp to where the elite guys, he can maybe be able to give him trouble. He's not going to be able to beat all of them.
Yeah, and you brought a good point about comparing that move up in division as the same move that Chocolatito made, and how he wasn't looking. He was He was winning, but he wasn't dominating. I just have a question. When Chocolatito moved up to 115, how old was he?
That's a good question.
Pushing right at 55.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So could that have been a factor as well? I mean, moving up in weight is always a factor, but also the age. I don't know. Bam's still young though, so.
Right. Bam's younger, lesser fights, shouldn't have as much wear and tear. And that's a good point to make out that I didn't make clear when I was making my point, because it is a different chapter in Bam's career if he goes up one more, where we knew that was going to be close to the icing of the cake for Chocolatito, a fourth weight division at that age with that amount of fights. We knew that was going to be pinnacle.
Everything else you made sense. I mean, he's Bam is short for bantamweight, in my opinion. Bantamweight, you start getting guys 5'5", 5'6". He's 5'3", I believe, or 5'4", no?
5'4",
I'll tell you a second.
They have him listed as 5'4", and Chocolatito in 2016 he was born in 87, so he was about to hit 30 when he moved up to super flyweight. But again, you got to consider the fact that he'd already been at a championship level since 2010 or 2008, I think. I think that's when he won his first championship. So it's a lot of wear and tear, a lot of rounds. And Bam Rodriguez right now is, how old is this guy? He's 24. I mean, 24. He's not even close to hitting 30 yet. So, I mean, the sky's the limit for this guy, which is why I understand why some people are overrating him just a tiny little bit. But let me just say this. When it comes to Fernando Martinez, Martinez is a very wide puncher. And punch for punch, I don't think he hits as hard as Bam Rodriguez. So I think that fight is sort of, it's a potentially fortuitous fight for Bam Rodriguez. Could be styles make fights, and it could work to Bam's benefit, or it could work out for him. But I still want to see it, because El Pumita is one of the top guys at super flyweight. Whereas Nakatani, it would necessitate for Bam Rodriguez for him to move up to another weight class. Sort of like, I don't know, it feels like unfinished business if he doesn't fight the winner of Martinez-Ioka. And by the way, I didn't include Chocolatito in this list, just telling you straight up. Do you still see him as a threat for Bam Rodriguez?
A challenge, but maybe not a threat. Chocolatito is a great fighter. He's a smart fighter. He's ring savvy. He does have power, even though it's not as explosively. It's more thudding at 115 than it is explosive. But he knows how to fight. He knows what he's doing. You don't get knocked out by go the distance of Rung Vasai and then lose by knockout and then come back to win world titles if you don't learn something along the way. That doesn't mean he would lose the decision. He could get blown out by Rodriguez. He's older. He hasn't done as much, and he hasn't really been on a winning streak. But I have enough faith in him that unless he's shot, he can give Jesse a run for his money. I think youth and size would be in Jesse's favor. Jesse naturally makes that way better.
Yeah, that's a good point. The other guy that I wanted to bring up here is another threat for Jesse Bam Rodriguez, although I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, I don't think the fight's going to take place, is Christian Gonzalez. Now, Christian Gonzalez, you might remember, already fought Jesse Bam Rodriguez. This was in the fight prior to the Sonny Edwards bout in 2023. And this was when Bam Rodriguez went back down to flyweight. And he took on Christian Gonzalez, who was Christian Gonzalez was undefeated. I think he's got one loss against another undefeated Mexican. But be that as it may, he had a record of like 16-1. And I got to tell you, the way he fought against Bam Rodriguez showed me championship level stuff. This guy never stopped moving. He had a full gas tank, was able to keep up with Bam Rodriguez's pressure. He's also taller and rangier than than the average flyweight. And he managed to fracture Bam Rodriguez's jaw. And that was the second time Bam had gone the distance. The first one had been prior to that one against Israel Gonzalez. So that's the fight that sort of slowed down Bam's momentum a little bit, where people said, oh, okay, he's not as impressive as he was in 2022. And then afterwards, he took out Sonny Edwards, and then he just recently took out another Mexican fighter, and so he's back on top. Well, and he beat Estrada too. So right now, the people only remember the last performance, which is when he took that Mexican guy out in 3 rounds. But Christian Gonzalez gave him a very good fight, and I would invite people to rewatch that fight, because this is a dude that could potentially upset and topple the apple cart. But again, realistically, I don't think it happens, because he doesn't have a name. I don't think he's fought since he lost to Rodriguez. And why would they need to rematch him? Jesse Bam Rodriguez is not in a Jaron Ennis position where he has to rematch the Karen because he's out of options. Bam Rodriguez has options. So this is a matchup that is unlikely, to ever occur again.
And to be fair, he has fought twice. He had a draw and a knockout win over Leroy Estrada. this Christian. So he has fought since then. But since 2023, and we're now in the beginning of 2025, he's fought twice. And this is since the Rodriguez fight. So he's not overly active. His management's not trying to get him in with He may not be able to get fights. You may make a point that he looks so good against Bam that they can't get him anybody. I don't have that behind the scenes knowledge. What I do know is he fought a guy who was 13-0 to a draw, a guy who was 18-4. I'm not trying to be the box rec warrior, but I can only go what's on paper. 18-4, and he did knock that guy out in 8 rounds, 8 out of 10. So he wasn't like he's been scheduled for 4 and 6 rounders doing nothing. He's fought 2 10-round fights. One guy was undefeated, and that was a split decision draw. So the only thing that, because I don't know much about him other than his fight with Jesse, is the fact that he's obviously young. He's obviously a warhorse that can give people trouble. I can't go much further off of that of what he's going to be able to do, but I do remember seeing a guy in a slightly different situation named Jorge Arce, who took on an aging Michael Carbajal and gave him a tougher fight than people expected and got knocked out late. Now, this isn't a crossroads fight like that one was, but an up-and-comer and unexpected gave the favorite more than they thought they could handle, and then great things came down the road. There's the correlation I'm making. So we'll see down the road if anyone's going to do anything else with him, because whoever's got him isn't pushing him very hard. Worst case scenario, what they did with Jesus Chavez back in the day before he got the Floyd Mayweather fight, and he was stuck in Mexico doing arms charge, is they just put him in every barn burner and bull ring they could keep him in to keep him busy and keep him fighting and keep him active and keep the rust from building up. And he ended up winning titles in 2 divisions. So that they're not doing that with this young man. So why? Don't know, but it's not looking good for him to capitalize off of that unless someone signs him and starts keeping him busy. And for the record, Christian Hernandez is 25 years old. He's actually a year older than Bam.
Yeah, they're about the same age. By the way, what type of name is Leroy Sanchez? Estrada, rather. Leroy Estrada. I mean, how good a fighter can that be with that name? I don't know. I don't trust it. I don't think it was interesting a win. Another guy. See, this is where it gets interesting. Perhaps Bam Rodriguez's biggest threat is actually lack of fan interest. Because let's face the facts, although he is entertaining, the boxing business has shown before that it takes more than just being entertaining to be some sort of an attraction. Lomachenko was entertaining, and ESPN and Top Rank really tried to push him. He never made it past or into the realm of mainstream star. So he's fighting at a lower weight class. Again, as you can see here, we're really trying to scrape together some tough threats that people would be excited to see him fight. But gone are the days of Chocolatito, Estrada, Sorronvisa, at least in their primes. Bam Rodriguez is going to have to wait for some of these threats to develop into viable, demanding stars or opponents.
True. And you said the sky's the limit in certain ways outside of the factor you put into for marketability. The limit could also be the scale. How high can he go? The sky's the limit or the scale's the limit. If he can go to 118 or higher,
right,
then he's pretty much peaked where he's at. And if there's not a lot of demand, 2 or 3 years ago, I was saying on the show that the 2 biggest divisions were 115 and 118, but those guys have dissipated, gone other places, moved up, or the cream's risen to the top in those divisions. And we know that the guys that came out on top aren't going to be challenged by the people that they fought to get there. In other words, the rematches will be entertaining, but we know what's going to happen. There's not going to be like a rematch and a rubber match, because we know that Inoue is better than those guys. We know that Jesse is better than Estrada and Rungvisai, and there's no reason for a rematch. And most of us, if we really love Chocolatito the way we do, probably aren't going to want to see that fight anyway, because we'd rather see him retire than to become a stepping stone for young guys. So,
yeah, at best,
that's kind of...
You mentioned Carbajal earlier. At best, he could be a local star, a local attraction. Put him in there in markets where they do well in the Hispanic market, rather, like Phoenix maybe. That's where he's fought recently and done good numbers. Put him in there. Put him in San Antonio maybe. I don't know how well he draws in Texas, but maybe that's what he can do. But in terms of being this, his marketability matching up to his talent and skills, I don't know if that's ever going to happen, because historically the smaller guys that do make it into the mainstream are at least at featherweight. Although the exception is Japan. No matter how big or short you may be over there, you will be a star. Just ask Naoya Inoue. So that's one exception right there for him.
On the show.
The other threat here, finally, just to round this off, because we do have other fighters to get to, is, and again, I put this guy last because it's still a maybe, Kenshiro Teraji, who's campaigning at flyweight. And Teraji, some of us have made the case that he should be top 10 pound for pound, although right now I think should be outside the top 10 pound for pound. I think Nakatani has a better resume, or at least a better argument for being in the top 10. But nevertheless, Kenshiro Teraji, now he's also the same age as Fernando Pumita Martinez. He's 33, but he's a multiple division champion. He's a hot and cold type of fighter, but he's very speedy, in and out. Reminds me a little bit of Manny Pacquiao, except he's not a southpaw and he doesn't hit as hard, and obviously not as skilled, but you get my point. He's very bouncy, a lot of hand speed, and I don't know. I don't think Jesse Rodriguez has ever fought anybody quite like Kenshiro Teraji, especially not Sonny Edwards, who was fast but didn't have a lick of power. So Teraji is a guy that I could potentially be a viable mega fight for Jesse Brown Rodriguez, especially if they do it in Japan. But again, I don't know if Jesse Brown Rodriguez would want to go there, because he probably thinks, well, why should I? He would be the champion going into the fight, I would assume, at super flyweight. So Kenshiro Teraji moving up in weight would probably have to go see him over there. But those are the viable threats out there that we've managed to come up with for Jesse Brown Rodriguez. So now we get to the point where you guys have to decide, amongst all of these threats, which one is the biggest one?
Clearly Nakatani.
Because of his length?
I agree.
Well, because of everything. I mean, yes, he's bigger and he's in a higher weight class. This part that's the obvious.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it is the fact that he's also young. He's also approaching his peak. He's not quite at his overall prime yet. And I just think he is right along the same level, but just a natural bigger man. The old saying is that a natural good man against a natural small man, the natural big man wins almost every time. This is one of those almost I would bet on if they were to face each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bucho, I heard you agreeing?
Yeah. With everything Chief said, 100%.
Well, there you go. And I'm going to have
just
to
what I like to hear.
I'm going to have to concur with you. I do believe all those guys, I don't think this is boxing. Everybody has a chance to beat everybody else. But Nakatani, of all these guys, again, he matches Bam Rodriguez's power, perhaps even dwarfs it. I don't know. Depends. Maybe not as fast, but he's got timing, which usually defeats speed. So as it is, I would agree with you guys. And I'm looking at the chat here, and people are saying, Reyes is saying Nakatani, M.AW saying Nakatani is the number one threat. They're saying that Nakatani would be fire. So there you go. I think people are in agreement that Junto Nakatani is the threat.
Danger, danger, danger.
There you go. All right, so now we're done with Jesse Brown Rodriguez. Don't forget to hit the like, fellas. Hit the like, hit the like, hit the like. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the show. We're trying to figure out here, determine who is or who are the biggest threats to these boxing stars. And then at the end, we try to determine who is the biggest threat for said fighter. Let's move up to another division here, this time at super bantamweight. And we're encountering one of the top 3 pound-for-pound fighters in the world. Some people say the number 1 guy. And that is Naoya, the Monster, Inoue. If ever there was a...
Monster.
The Monster. You ever hear of the Monster? If ever there was a fighter who deserved the moniker Monster...
He's a little monster. He's a little Japanese monster.
Oh, Recognize is here. Shout out to Recognize. I knew. I was going to say, since when does Chief or Bucho do a good Recognize impersonation? But that's Recognize right there. Shout out to you, man.
Nobody.
Nobody. By the way, Recognize, what we're doing here is we're just going through some of the biggest stars in boxing, or biggest names, and then we're trying to determine who are the biggest threats. And then at the end, you guys have to decide, along with the audience, who is the biggest threat to said fighter. So right now we've got the Martha, and I will say that the first one, the thread that came to mind is MJ. Not even going to try to say his last name. Well, actually, I will. Akhmadaliev, right? MJ Akhmadaliev, who has a very good record. Some people have sort of thrown him under the bus because he ended up getting upset by Marlon Tapales in 2023. I was just as surprised as most people. But Akhmadaliev is 30 years old. He's about the same dimensions as Inoue, of 5 feet and 5 inches and a half tall. He has some solid wins. I think the best win is still when he fought Daniel Roman a couple of years ago. It was right before the pandemic in 2020. Since then, he's never really fought a guy as big a name as Daniel Roman. But what's interesting about Akhmadaliev is that he's got 13 fights, but he fights at a level way above that because of his amateur pedigree and dossier. He's been able to. He's one of those modern Central Asian, Eastern European, whatever fighters who made the quick transition from amateur to professional. Has been very successful at it. He's a southpaw on top of that. But again, I think the big knock on him, guys, is that Marlon Tapales was able to out-hustle him back in 2023. So, guys, what do you think about MJ Akhmadaliev, and what's the level threat, or the threat level that we would that you would give him against Naoya Inoue?
At the moment, not very high. All right, recognize. You go ahead.
From a 1 to 10, a 5.
Whoa.
Yeah. Give him a 5.
He's not on that level.
You mentioned his resume. He's one of these fighters that, had a long, extensive amateur career. And then as a pro, he's had 13 fights, but the level of competition is reminiscent of guys like Lomachenko, Usyk. Obviously he's a couple of levels below those guys, but he's pretty good. He's pretty good. But in terms of like Inoue up to this part of his career, he's been almost like untouchable. He had a couple of hiccups in his career. He got dropped by I'm forgetting the Mexican kid's name with a lot of power that he knocked out. I'm drawing a blank with his name. Okay. Sorry. But he got dropped by that guy. What was in the first round?
Sorry. You talk about Neri.
Neri. There you go.
Yeah.
I was drawing a blank with his name.
I drew a blank too for some reason.
Neri dropped him. In the first fight, Nonito Donaire fractured his orbital bone. Well, pretty much outside of that, and even in those wins, he convincingly won those fights. Right? He knocks out Neri, and he basically almost knocked out Donaire in the first fight, and then came back and fought Donaire again in the second fight and knocked him out in 2 rounds. So that's the level you're dealing with. So obviously, when you take a guy like MJ and you look at him and you say, what's the threat level? At least in my opinion, it's average. It's an average threat level. I don't think it's like beyond. This speaks to how good I think Inoue is.
Yeah, I was gonna
compare to the division right now. So
I was gonna say that. Yeah, I was gonna say it's like it's not a knock on MJ, because MJ is like I said, the fact that he was able to transition so well into the professional ranks and under 5 fights, and he was already fighting a guy like Daniel Roman. You gotta give him credit for that, but. Inoue is what people, the term generational talent gets thrown around a lot, but Inoue is just that. MJ is the type of guy that if Inoue wasn't around, he'd probably still be the number 1 guy, or at worst number 2, because he did lose to Tapales. But Inoue is just on another level.
I mean, think about Inoue, right? If Inoue was to fall apart right now, right, his next fight, and it just gets worse from there, he would already accomplish what he's done. What other fighters never could accomplish, other great fighters couldn't accomplish. If he was to end right now his career.
I mean, let's look at it. 21 wins against in world championship fights, 15 world champions, 4 divisions, 2-time undisputed. Yeah. And he does it in a fashion that's amazing. Because, again, like I've said, and BDA just has repeated that we've said from this panel, generational talent. He is a generational talent. Is he approaching the level where he's reaching the peak of how far he can take that generational talent? Probably at 126 will be the ceiling. MJ, like Rick and I said, live opponent. So if he's at 1 to 10, he gives him a 5. With respect to recognize my interpretation, what that means is he's a live opponent to give him a challenge, not someone that you're going to really anticipate to beat him.
Right.
So he'll give him some troubles. He might even drop him because MJ can punch and he's talented. He has a mind. He knows how to fight. He has a mind for the sport. You don't get as far as he's done in less than 15 fights like MJ has, unless you have a solid foundation of the knowledge of the sport of boxing with intangibles to go with it. Speed, power, toughness, things that you can't train into people. They're born with. All right, he's got that. That doesn't mean that all those things that he's got at a higher level than everyone else in the division outside of Inoue that he's going to beat Inoue.
Exactly. And that's the thing.
Inoue's just a level above.
Because now Eddie Hearn started the campaign, restarted the campaign last year that, Inoue is avoiding MJ. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, obviously Hearn has to say that he's a promoter, but nobody really that I know believes that. In fact, most of the people that I talk to and I ask them, hey, what about Inoue, MJ? They go, well, could be a good fight, could be entertaining for as long as it lasts, but Inoue, like Rick and I said, it's just at another level. And let's not forget, though, however, that Inoue is sort of hitting that cap at 122. Some people have been talking about 126. I don't know. I think at 122 is where you're starting to see him look human. Like Rick and I said, Neri dropped him. Tapales was giving him some solid rounds. So I don't know. And TJ Doheny, whatever his name was, managed to give him a couple of tough rounds too before he ended up pulling his taint or whatever and quitting. So I wouldn't put it past MJ to maybe he could eke out a decision. You never know. That's why they fight the fights. Let's move to another. If I
may wrap up MJ real quick, we're also talking about a man who's in his 30s, 320 amateur fights. Remember, as I've said on this channel before, when you have these really long amateur careers, and you start to hit your 30, all of that training and all of that sparring and all of those fights start to catch up to you. Now. Inoue's also over 30, but this guy's over 30 with way more fights. All of his fights have been against the top level professionals. And then he only fought once in 2024, and that went 3 rounds.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
So
yeah,
he hasn't been active. He had one, so he lost to Taples. He fought a guy named Kevin Gonzalez. That went 8 rounds. That was pretty good. Followed up with that a year later. In December of 23 to December of 24, no fights except for one against Ricardo Franco, and it only went 3 rounds.
I don't understand.
So now we're anticipating him. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to look into why he was only inactive. He sort of flew under the radar for me last year, and I didn't even realize that he'd been inactive for over a year. That's insane. Again, like you said, that doesn't bode well for him and his prospects. And here's another thing.
He's a year younger than Inoue, but he hasn't been as active. And Inoue only had 81 amateur fights.
Right.
There's a big difference between 300 and 81.
One last thing I'll say about Inoue versus MJ is that I didn't like how MJ handled Tapales' speed. He couldn't see that left hand coming, couldn't get out of the way of it. And Inoue is just as explosive as Tapales, but on top of that, he's a better fighter. So, again, that's why I don't really like MJ's chances or in picking him to beat Inoue. But again, you never know. Another threat for Inoue here, and he comes up again, Junto Nakatani. By virtue of the fact that he's a long fighter with timing and power, he can actually move across the divisions rather easily. Again, he's at 118 now. They're talking about this. They're talking about the Inoue Nakatani, and they're saying that it could be the biggest Japanese fight of all time. It would be a mega fight between two guys in their primes or as close to their physical peaks as possible. Guys, what do you think? Is Nakatani also a threat just as he was to Bam Rodriguez?
Yeah. I think he's a bigger threat to Bam, but in terms of Inoue, even though he's not in the division, I give him a bigger threat than anybody at 122.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with that completely.
Interesting.
His size, I think he's like 5'7", right? 5, something like that.
Uh-huh.
He's pretty a long guy. He's got a lot of power. a lot of linear power too, from what I've seen. That could be a problem for a guy like Inoue, who's shorter. I think I would still go Inoue to beat him, but I'm just talking about in terms of levels of threat. You know, I would probably, I don't know. I think I would take him, even though he's at 118, the bigger threat than anybody at 122. Unless Inoue was to go up to 126, then I would say maybe there's guys up there that are bigger threat than Nakatani.
But at 122, I agree with you. I don't think there is a threat to Inoue at 22. I think the biggest challenge would be Nakatani moving up. And I don't dispute that at all. I think he has every intangible to make it a very tough fight. I think if Inoue doesn't take him seriously, I see an upset. But I don't see Inoue taking a countryman for two guys that want to be the best out of Japan, if not the best out of Asia. And remember, that means you're approaching trying to fill Manny Pacquiao's shoes in order to do that. I don't see either one of them taking each other lightly enough to where they're going to be underprepared and have an off night. They'll be peaked against each other, looking to try and upset the other. It'd be great. I think it'd be a great fight. But just remember, Carlos Zarate was an amazing animal at 118. Moves up to 122, gets blown out by Wilfredo Gomez. Okay, Gomez is a monster. So, okay, fine. But Gomez is a monster at 122, goes up to 126, gets blown out by Salvador Sanchez. These small weight divisions.
You know what
guys don't take it.
It's kind of funny. There's some similarities, right? So if you remember Zarate's, in terms of his height and reach, it was kind of similar in difference. It was kind of similar to Gomez and Zarate, Nakatani and Inoue. I believe Zarate is taller and longer than Wilfredo Gomez, if I remember correctly.
Well, give me a second to confirm, but if I'm thinking the same.
I think so.
Keep going while I look up those intangibles.
Yeah, just an interesting, you know, in terms of like coincidences, like two guys, you know, separated by one division, one at 118, the other one at 122. It's just kind of. And yeah, both great fighters too. You know, both matchups were great matchups going in. You know, Zarate was like insane, right? I think he had like he was like at that point like 50-0 with like almost all wins by knockouts. You know, which is insane at bantamweight.
Yeah, this
probably the greatest bantamweight ever. You know, he's probably the greatest bantamweight to ever do it.
You know, it's interesting. Yeah,
who are you talking about?
Zarate.
Oh, okay, yeah.
People say, you know, these lower weight divisions, they don't count him as much. You know, they don't count a guy like Inoue. That's the argument I've heard some people say. Like, well, with Inoue winning as many titles across different divisions isn't as impressive as Crawford because he didn't have to move up many poundage. I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. Proportional to how big these guys are, 4 pounds is a lot. Historically, we've seen that, and that the example you guys just brought up about how Zarate looked fantastic. He looked, he was demolishing guys at bantamweight. He moves up to super bantamweight. All of a sudden, he takes on a guy like Wilfredo Gomez. He gets destroyed in 4 or 5 rounds. Conversely, Gomez moves up in weight, 126, takes on Salvador Sanchez. He gets fucking blown out of there as well, demolished. So,
and Salvador Sanchez was about to return the boxing world a favor right before he died, and he was going to fight Alexis Aguayo.
Oh, well, there you go.
And
yes,
that was something. When they asked him, he said that he would take that challenge, and he did it with a smile. And he's like, "Of course."
And then that fight at 130 would have been. Well, we don't know what's that when. We don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because I know we're talking about other fighters, but we don't know what Salvador could have been at 126. The range and style that he used, he had other tangibles outside of the power at the weight that he could have used. 130 was where Arguello started to slow down, and he needed you to be in front of you. At 135, he could not fight a mover. 130, he could, but he'd rather you be in front of him. At 126, he was a monster. But he was no longer there when Salvador Sanchez became champion. And like you said, Salvador was salivating to get that fight.
So it's a shame it didn't happen. And you know what? When we were talking about Bam Rodriguez, the name Salvador Sanchez popped into my mind because he's already accomplished so much. He's still just 24. So hopefully Bam Rodriguez, I'm knocking on wood here, Hopefully he doesn't drive very fast. Hopefully he drives under the limit, always wears his seatbelt, and doesn't get drunk as he does so. Okay, so sticking to Naoya Inoue here, another threat that I see for him, and this isn't just one fighter, it's a whole bunch of them, and we're talking about the 126-pound division. Let me just give you a basic preview of who he could fight over there at 126. You got Brandon Figueroa, who's a big featherweight, very physical type fighter, comes forward chest to chest. Then you got Rafael Espinoza, who's 6 feet tall. Forget 5'7".
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about Nakatani 5'7". This guy's 6 feet tall. Although I think he's moving up in weight now. I think that's what I heard. Okay, so he's moving up in weight. You get Angelo Leo, who just knocked out El Venado Lopez with a fantastic left hook. So watch out for this guy's power. And then you got Nick Ball, whose name is apropos because he's like an iron ball of steel. This dude is just... again, I said that Figueroa is very physical. Nick Ball, although he's very short, just doesn't stop coming, doesn't stop throwing. He's got speed on top of that, on top of his deadly attack or voluminous attack. So, and we've seen, like I said, Inoue is sort of struggling against some guys at 122, looking a little bit more human than he did in previous divisions. So, I think 126, any of these guys could potentially upset Naoya Inoue. What do you guys think about the 126-pound division?
I would give the 126-pound division the most dangerous threat to him.
Ooh.
Outside of okay, so let's break down Inoue. He's 31 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think he's reaching his peak in terms of prime. This is the very best you're gonna get out of him.
Mm-hmm.
He's already moved up from 108 to 122. That's 14 pounds. If he was to go up to 126, I'm gonna give you a little historical background, right?
Mm-hmm.
If he was to actually go to 126 and win a belt, he would be only the second person, okay, and probably the first person ever to win a belt below flyweight and go up featherweight and win a belt. So at 126 to me, because of the height difference, I think in terms of talent, you can see that Inoue's a lot better than these guys. But I think that in terms of the size difference, and that these guys that you mentioned are good fighters, they're actually very good fighters, the 126 division has to be his biggest threat because of the size.
So it depends on who he fights there. You are correct. Fulton, though, he's already beaten. Brandon Figueroa, that would be a tough one. Obviously, he's a big guy, and he's more comfortable at that weight than he was at 122. Now we got to go to activity and how active are these guys staying sharp in their game. The Figueroa, since he lost to Fulton, has had 4 fights. Okay, so and he's about to rematch Fulton, so that kind of will answer some questions there between Fulton and Figueroa on who's the better between those two guys, because we all know in this panel that was a close fight that could have gone either way, and some of us had Figueroa winning. But and Carlos Castro was 27-1, so he's fought some good competition there. And for WBC quote-unquote interim belt, basically meaning whoever the champion was didn't want to give it up yet. Figueroa is 5'9", so he's really tall. He poses some problems. He's a big kid. He knows how to fight, and he can punch. And he had a pretty good sparring partner, his brother. And I think Rafael Espinosa, when he said was 6 foot tall. I don't know much about this guy, but he's 30 years old, and he's had 26 wins, 22 knockouts. Not just tall, but also a long reach, very long reach.
Who are you talking
I
about?
don't
Figueroa
know
still?
how he fights.
Who are you talking about?
So
He fights a lot on the inside.
Rafael Espinosa.
Okay, Espinosa. I mean, Chief, just to give you an idea, this guy can fight. He's not a back foot bitch, but he can fight at long range. Very quick punches, doesn't telegraph him. Punches with both hands, by the way. Good jab, good left hook, good uppercut, straight right hand. Watch the Robeisy Ramirez fight. Robeisy Ramirez, 2-time Olympic gold medalist. Hell of a left hand. Electric left hand. The first fight was Fight of the Year candidate. I mean, you should watch. That is the fight that really shows you what Espinosa is all about. I think it might be on YouTube, but the fact that he's 6 feet tall and he can maintain range and just doesn't stop throwing, is a formidable adversary for anybody. So
BDA, correct me if I'm wrong. The Rubisi, whatever his name is, Ramirez. Did he drop him? Did he drop Espinosa in the first fight?
He did with a right hook
in the 5th round,
and then he quit in the rematch. I don't know. I mean, he blamed it on an elbow, but people already forgot about that fight. Now, before we continue, I mean, we got to continue on here. The last thread that I was able to scrape up here for Naoya Inoue is still John Riel Casimero from the Philippines. Now, the reason why I bring up Casimero is because the Filipinos keep bringing him up on the internet. John Riel Casimero is a power puncher. I kind of like him because he beat Rigondeaux, and Rigondeaux put on such a horrible performance that it finally drove him out off of conventional TV forever. The last time I saw him fight was in Saudi Arabia. That was before a pressure cooker blew up in his face. But Casimero, the problem for him is he's already 35. He's 35 years old. He's been around forever. He's fought some and beaten some credible names. Obviously, no one near as close to Inoue. He was supposed to fight Donaire at some point in a battle of Filipinos, to the point where Casimero, crazy motherfucker, was going after Donaire's wife. So there was a lot of back and forth, which you would expect against Inoue, which I don't think he's ever experienced before. But this is a bit of a long shot because I think Casimero has not been that active. In fact, he fought twice in 2023, only fought once this year, or last year, rather, in 2024, and it was a first-round TKO. So just like MJ Akhmadaliev, not a lot of activity. People forget that he exists. I don't think he's made a case for himself to fight Inoue. But all I'll say is I'd be interested to see that fight if it happens. Just like the MJ Akhmadaliev. Even though I don't think he would make it past the 6th round, maybe. He's still a crazy guy. He would wait forward, launch power punches at Inoue. And we saw what happened with Neri. He did manage to drop Inoue, so you just never know. But I'd still be interested in that one.
Yeah, I definitely think it would have been better a few years ago than now. Everything you named on why it's not going to be why it's going to be a long shot for Casimero is accurate. But I'd fighting wise, I don't know about character as a person. Fighting wise, Casimero deserves this shot to try and see if he can pull it off. And if he does, this would actually be the icing that would solidify him for being a Hall of Fame fighter. He's a multi-division champion. He's fought some really good fighters. He's pulled off some upsets. He has a very good record in title fights. And not an excellent record, but a very good record. And if you were to pull off something like this against a fighter of Inoue's caliber and accomplishments, it's going to be hard for anyone to say, nah, you know what, we're going to overlook him this go around. It would solidify him. So he deserves the right to try and attempt to solidify his career for the Hall of Fame. I don't think that makes him a viable threat. I just think he deserves the fight.
And again, he's got some things going for him. He's got a lot of experience. He's been boxing professionally for 17 years. And just look at some of the names, some of the guys he's beaten. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Reno Rang. He's the guy that beat the Chinese gold medalist twice. And I think he also has a win over Ioka. So that was a good, Casimero lost the first time to the Thai fighter, and then he beat him, stomped him in the rematch. He also has a TKO win over Charlie Edwards, who I believe is Sonny Edwards' brother. And he's actually quite a good fighter in his own right, competent fighter. He beat Zolani Tete, who you might remember was in the WSSB tournament, bantamweight tournament, a couple of years ago. He dropped him in the 3rd round. He beat an undefeated Duke Mika, African fighter, that was on the undercard of Charlo Davidiachenko. And that was a fight that I was looking forward to going in there because Duke Mika was undefeated, he was aggressive, and Casimero just wiped the floor with him in under 10 rounds. He's got a win over Casimero too. Over Rigondeaux. So he's got a win over Casimero. Casimero has a win over Rigondeaux. So he's fought different types of styles and everything, but it's just the inactivity combined with the fact that he's already 35. If it does, it has to happen now. It could still happen, but it would have to happen now, and he's been inactive. So I don't think it ever happens. But anyway, guys.
JR Casimero is about to end up like my man JR from the Dallas franchise. Anybody who's old enough to remember that?
When he got shot, is what you're saying?
Yeah. JR, man, he was a legend. But
what the fuck?
I kind of like Casimero, similar to the way I felt about that dude back in the days. But I think his time is done, man. He's 35. Yeah. It's not really in terms of like the level of threat that he can be to somebody like Inoue.
Yeah. Somebody told me Somebody told me he does too much partying with his manager, Sean Gibbons. I mean, if you ever see Sean Gibbons, he looks like he's doing something in the bathroom, if you know what I mean, in the public bathroom. You know, he probably gets up constantly to go to the bathroom, and then he comes back all energized. Okay, guys, what are we doing next? You know, it's like, so I don't know. So maybe that's the problem right there. So who's the biggest threat for Inoue then, out of all these ones that we were able to identify?
Well, since we can't narrow down a particular fighter at 126 because there's multiple of them, I mean, that's going to be his biggest challenge is his next weight class. But individual fighter-wise, the one's going to give him the biggest trouble is going to be Nakatani.
Well, you can choose a 126, by the way. That's why I put it up as a threat there.
Yeah, I'll put I don't know, I'll slight edge 126 over, in my opinion, over Nakatani.
Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, me too. It's the uncharted territory. We don't know what's going to happen up there. There's some big guys. Like somebody mentioned, I think Chief said that. Some big guys up there.
And remember, if he was to accomplish 126 the way he did, if he was to conquer 126 the way he did 118 and 122, he makes history. Nobody's ever done this.
Yeah, that's Pacquiao level stuff right there.
Yeah.
That's better than Donaire. Remember, but Donaire almost did it, but
Donaire almost did it, I believe so. Yeah, right.
122. 122. That's where he started failing.
Yep.
Yeah, and then when he fought Walters,
Nicholas Waters win the belt off of him at 126?
No,
I don't think so. I think Walters had won it off Darchinian. I forget. But be that as it may,
but definitely, Donaire did not win a belt at 126.
Mm-hmm. All right, now let's. So I agree with you guys. I think Nakatani would be the number two threat, but 126 as a whole, that is the biggest threat for Inoue that we've been able to detect, a whole new division, and so that's what we're going.
Danger.
All right.
Danger.
Don't forget to hit the like, fellas. Hit the like. Really helps us out. And let me read a couple of comments here, just see what people said. Who shot JR? Rapax is asking. Well, I mean, you're 40 years late to the party, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, who knows who really shot him, right?
Was that?
Who knows who really shot him?
Don't spoil it.
No, that's what I said. Who knows?
Drunk Irishman says Nakatani is the biggest threat. Eparakua says, don't hate on the cocaine party. I'm not hating. I'm just saying it's could be a problem right now, but not for everybody. If you can handle cocaine, you're good. M.W. says 126 is definitely Naoya's biggest threat. Ray says he's still Nakatani. The Quack says, I don't feel like any of them are really a legitimate threat. Oh, come on. See, now you're overrating. Was that?
I Am Your Leader says Nick Ball at 126.
Yeah, specifically perhaps Nick Ball, maybe. All right, let's move on here to our next fighter and some of his biggest threats. And we're moving up to 130 now. Emmanuel El Vaquero Navarrete, who just recently resurfaced with a good win over Oscar Valdez, becoming the first and only man to stop the always tough Oscar Valdez. Prior to that, he flew too high to the sun, too close to the sun, taking on Denis Berenchik, lost a very close decision, and like I said, moved back down, took care of business against Valdez, and now there's a lot of options available for him. I'll tell you what I think is the first threat that I see for him, and I've said it before, the lifestyle. This guy has admitted to being a wild guy, a little bit out of control ever since he was a kid. He likes to eat. He likes them tacos, flautas, quesadillas, probably the beer too, which will do it for you. And who knows what else. He's looking like an old Eric Morales. I don't know if you guys remember when Eric Morales used to fight at 140? That's what he's looking like. And he's only 29. Yeah. He's only 29 and he already has the body of an old Eric Morales. So his record is he's got 39 wins, 2 losses, 32 knockouts. So he's a power puncher, awkward at that. Yeah. You can't find a guy to spar because you can't find anybody who fights like him or at least even close to him. So, guys, what do you think about the lifestyle?
I like the lifestyle. But I would say this. Some guys react to eating certain foods different. This is a proven fact, Maybe a guy like that, he can't, they say, well, why does he eat like that? And he's got to make weight. Well, he's been making weight. And when he makes weight, usually he's always strong. He's always ready to go. He's a volume power puncher. I would like for him. He doesn't have to be a fucking Adonis. This is boxing, not a fucking GQ model competition. I would just like for him to basically I guess be in slightly better shape in fights. But other than that, I don't think his lifestyle is affecting anything. He's got a couple of losses because he's challenging himself. That's the reason why he got a couple of losses.
Yeah, true. It's not because he's being completely outclassed by the person he's going up against, but he's consistently looking for some other way. And let's face it, Top Rank hasn't matched him up with the toughest guys, and he knows some of that. So he still wants to prove himself. He's still hungry, and not just for tacos. He still wants to try and prove that he's a really good fighter. So I do like him. I think there was 1 year that Canelo was voted in for Fighter of the Year. I talked to I messaged Dan at Raphael. We're not, have had a phone conversation, but on why Navarrete, who back when everyone was fighting once a year, he made 4 title defenses in 1 year, something I haven't seen a world-class fighter do since De La Hoya or Shane Mosley. And for some reason that didn't even he wasn't even in the running from what I understand for Fighter of the Year. I'm like, well, Canelo was because he had 2 fights, but this guy risked his title 4 times, once a season. So that's really like once every 2 months, 2 or 3 months. And it wasn't nominated for Fighter of the Year. And one of those fights was against Dogbo, who was a rematch with Dogbo, who was an up-and-coming star at the time till Navarrete upset him. So I don't have enough good things to say about Navarrete, even though I don't think he's aesthetically great. When you look at him, you're going to say, there's plenty of guys that could have beat him in history. Well, I say if we had this mythical time machine, I would put him in against all those fighters just to watch and see if they could. I'm not saying they couldn't, but I would sure like to see him try. So that's the end of my rant there.
Yeah, but a lot of people were saying that he didn't look like he was in shape at 135, and that performance against the Ukrainian guy, Baranchik, yeah, is that his name, Baranchik? Yeah, it did look like this guy wasn't 100%.
Yeah, he looked out of shape. Like he was let me not say out of shape. He just looked fat.
Yeah, and
noted. Go ahead.
How old? Yeah. No, I was just gonna say how old is he, because I recognize was saying that some people can pull that off, and it's true. I remember Ricky Hatton. Remember he used to balloon up in weight in between fights, but eventually that caught up to him, and it caught up to him at an early age. I mean, what early 30s?
Under 30.
Under 30. It's under 30. So there you go. You know what I mean? So it's
Ricky Hatton was known for getting plastered at the Irish pubs in England. Yeah, so he was like he's kind of known for that.
So I don't know exactly how much of a partier / extremist Navarrete is when he's not training. He's 29 years old. If you guys remember Miguel Angel Gonzalez, the lightweight champ in the 90s, when he was in shape, he never looked ripped. Some people don't have the physique. Yeah. Now at 135, I'm going to say, go ahead.
He had a better physique than he was leaner. He looked leaner than Navarrete. Miguel.
Maybe Navarrete blows up in between weight classes a good bit. And I don't know what the deal is with him. And I don't know his genetics. I can't trace all this. So I'm not going to try and dive. And we need Jimmy to kind of get it, to break that down. That's not me. What I can say is that he's a natural fighter. He's a big guy for this area. You also have to realize that was his 4th weight class as a world champion. I don't know where he turned pro. But in 122, 126, 130, 135 was his 4th weight class. So technically, that was over 10 pounds of putting on weight, not necessarily muscle, of moving up. Now, maybe he didn't acclimate to the weight right. Maybe he didn't train right. Maybe he just thought bulking up on tacos, like we've been joking about, was a way for him making weight. Who knows? Don't know. It was a close loss. It wasn't a blowout. It was a competitive fight, but a clear loss just the same. Some guys are only good at 4 weight classes. Not to mention how many guys have been champions in 4 weight classes. Even though there've been a lot since 1980, I recognize we've had this conversation before. It's still not a plethora. Like, if it's so easy, we would have like 90 of them. We still don't have that many yet. We have maybe 20 since 1980, but 1980 was almost 40 years ago. So, or almost 50 years ago. So we're getting to the point to where over half a century, we still don't even have like 30 people that have been champions of 4 weight classes, and he's in that club.
That's
so
right. That's
that
true.
would have been his 5th weight class. And very few people have 5 champions in 5 weight classes. So maybe he can't carry that weight at all, and fat's the only way he knows how to look because he just can't carry it. It's just too much for him. Look what De La Hoya looked at 160. He's big enough to carry the frame, but when he was there, he looked fat.
Chief, historically, the guys who make it to the 4 division club are guys who got speed because they're able to use that speed. Speed will always get you, it will always stay with you no matter how many weight classes you go up, usually. So if you got speed and you're a boxer, you can usually out-hustle a guy and get yourself a win. Navarrete is not that type of guy. He's got an awkward style, and he relies on his power to get it done too. That awkward style didn't work against Beterbiev because Beterbiev knew how to control it. And as to whether he looks fat or not, if you watch him at 122 when he came out of the scene, or into the scene rather, against Dogbo, he didn't look ripped either. But now he's looking like he's got a trunk around his midsection. So that's what at 135. So that's what that worries me about him, is that he's not he's packing on fat, which is not something you want to see from a fighter. But look, we got to move on to the next threat here, and that is Usyk Foster. Usyk Foster, 31 years old, 23 wins, 3 losses, although some people would say controversial ones. Very quick. I think he's about as tall as Navarrete, or maybe even taller. 5'8.5". Navarrete is 5'7". Yeah, so he's taller than Navarrete. He's quicker, but he doesn't hit as hard. He doesn't have that same go-getter attitude that Navarrete has. He's more of a counterpuncher, likes to bark when he punches. He likes to leap backwards like Screw Stevenson. It cost him against Conceição. It seems like he needs a lot of help sometimes to get to the decisions. Guys, what do you think about Usyk Foster? And I'll be right back. You guys take over, please.
Recognize?
Yeah, I mean, he has a chance to outbox him. I give him a really good chance of outboxing Navarrete. But like BDA said, he doesn't really go for it. That's why he has like 3 losses. You know, it's no knock on having some losses when you're fighting top level competition, you know, at your weight class. But it's probably the reason what separates him from being, you know, the best 130 pounder, you know, at the moment in the division.
Well, we remember Stu, and I'm going to honor Stu by bringing him up here. We talked about some things you can't teach people in boxing. So he made the comment one time that one of the Durrell brothers are probably just as talented as Andre Ward, maybe even more so. But Andre Ward's got something else. He has toughness and grit. Now, I'm not going to say Usyk Foster doesn't have that, but when the fight's on the line, he has to go grab it. He doesn't do that. And that's his downfall. When the fight's on the line and it's close, especially if he doesn't realize it's close, but his corner's telling him, hey, look, you need to go. This is your time. You're not going to show this off with your skill. Now you got to show your toughness. 1, I don't know if his corner's ever telling him that. 2, when that's been the case, even if these fights have been quote unquote robberies or close decisions that should have gone his way, he's not putting the exclamation point on the fight. And every fighter that does that, including Mayweather in his amateur career and the Olympics, they don't go out and put that exclamation point on. They come up short and they blame everyone but themselves for not going and doing their job as a professional prize fighter and closing the show. So I'm not jumping on his case too much because I haven't seen a whole lot of Foster's fights. But if he actually goes out to try and prove a point midway or even at the very last round, he would probably do better by going in and just like, all right, I'm ahead. Now I'm not going to put myself at risk, but I'm really going to tattoo this guy with angles. You know, not stand right in front of him, throw the hook from the side, do something a little bit different, but still try and cement the point. He doesn't seem to do that.
By the way,
that's...
So sorry, Chief, but some people in the chat are calling him Shady Foster. I mean, come on. You see what you started? I blame you for starting that by saying that he doesn't have that dog, as it were. But your point still stands about that, is that he's got speed, he's got very good reflexes. That's one thing that impresses me, is how quickly he's able to see the punches coming. But I think that's the problem. He's too concerned with what's coming. I will say, however, that Denis Beranchyk was able to sort of tame Navarrete's wild style a little bit, and maybe O'Shaquie Foster can do that. I don't think he schools Navarrete, and I don't think Navarrete schools him either, unless he conclusively stops him or whatever. I think that's the only way he conclusively beats O'Shaquie Foster. I think it's a tough fight for either guy. The other was that?
I said agreed. To close out real quick, if the fight's close and tough, I don't see O'Shaquie Foster making the exclamation point. I see Navarrete trying to close the show and prove something. And so if it comes down to a fight like that, I give the edge to Navarrete. Skill-wise, obviously, Foster. The aesthetic, pleasing athletic skill, definitely Foster.
By the way, Boxeo Atomico told me over at the Boxing Scientists podcast that he said that the reason why Navarrete looked bad against Conceição and Beranchyk or subpar compared to his other performances because he was injured. He had a nagging injury, wrist injury or hand injury. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know. Anybody can say that they have an injury or whatever. But I don't know if it's true or not. But if he's at 100%, because he certainly showed us he was a different fighter against Valdez in the rematch, then that is a very tough opponent for anybody. A guy that's tough for anybody as well is the next threat. That is young Shakur Stevenson. Like O'Shaquie Foster, very quick, incredible reflexes, but like Foster, maybe lacks a little bit of that fire inside, that the type of fire you might need to keep a guy like Navarrete off of you to conclusively beat him. Guys, what do you think about Shakur Stevenson's chances as a threat against Navarrete?
I think a lot of lightweights have a shot against Navarrete to begin with because, again, fifth weight class, he looks fat when he's there. Right. Or from what we've seen so far, if he has a serious camp and shows up in better condition, I can't say shape because shape's also how you look aesthetically, not just how you can perform. Like you said, he's never looked like he's an Adonis. So he's probably never going to show up lean and chiseled. But he might show up leaner in another attempt at 135. But at the same time, his body may not hold 135. And with Shakur being at 135 and some people trying to say he's going to try and meet Haney at 140, I find this one hard to see happening anyway. Shakur's definitely not going down to 130 to fight him.
Hey, can I say something about...
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, two things about that. Number one, the reason, because we're talking about weight, the reason why I brought up Shakur Stevenson, who's a lightweight, is because I think from what I've heard and the way people are talking, that is a viable fight that Top Rank has been wanting to make for a while. There's a dispute about because apparently they offered a fight to Navarrete back in 2019, I think, or pre-pandemic, and some people say that it was Shakur Stevenson's fault, other people say that it was Navarrete who dogged the fight. I don't know, but that is something that I'm pretty sure that they've been willing to talk about. And now that Shakur Stevenson is with Matchroom, it might not be doable, but you just never know. Maybe they're willing to work. Bob Arum and Eddie Hearn are willing to work with each other. Just real quick, Virtuoso in the chat says he disagrees with Chief, and he says about O'Shaquie Foster's lack of tenacity. And he says, Chief, I disagree because against Eduardo Rocky Hernandez in Mexico, Foster went after it and closed the show when he knew he was going to get a shady decision on foreign soil. Well, can I say one thing about that? I disagree with that because if you watch that fight, O'Shaquie Foster was doing a lot of the usual ass-style tactics. A lot of moving, a lot of clinching especially. The referee warned him about the clinches, and that's what forced O'Shaquie Foster to have to fight, which is what fighters are supposed to be doing. And most referees, all referees should be warning a guy for the clinching. They just happened to be one of those cases where they did warn a guy for doing that, and that's why he turned into the aesthetically pleasing fight that it was. I don't think O'Shaquie Foster did it because he wanted to. He did it out of necessity. But at least he pulled it off. He
pulled it off. Yeah.
Yeah,
he pulled it off and he did it. And so Virtuoso, who I respect immensely, has a point. But to what you're getting at, and I'll go back and watch that one for my own sake to add to my knowledge in the whole thing. But again, like you're saying, it wasn't that he dug deep out of his own instinct. Someone said, you better do it or else. And so that's what made him do it. So I don't think it's still instinctively in him. That doesn't mean that it can't be brought out, but it has to be, there needs to be a catalyst. He doesn't just do it. So that was my original point. Virtuoso may have a valid point, but you backed mine, BDA, is the fact that there was an outside force that made him do it. He didn't do it instinctively on his own free will.
Well, yeah, which is to your point, and you articulated it better than I did. which now makes me jealous and envious. I'm a sociopath, so I'm gonna have to take revenge on you at some point.
So just let me enjoy this one because you're way more articulate than me.
All right.
Let me have this one, please.
All right, I'll let you have it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Now, the final thread here that, again, it's because Navarrete, you never know. Top Rank is trying to feed him to some other names. Again, Top Rank, maybe they're dialing it down a little bit. I don't know, but hopefully they are. But I think they're invested in creating American stars. And I think Keyshawn Davis is one guy. I've heard Keyshawn Davis as a possible future opponent. Some people have even said Abdullah Mason, who I think is at 130. But I think that's still too much too soon for Mason to be in there against a guy like Navarrete. So I think we'd have to go with Keyshawn Davis, although Keyshawn Davis is going to be fighting Denis Berenchik. So that's a fight that's still a long way to go. And some people in the chat mentioned Rafael Espinosa. And I got to tell you, if Top Rank are smart and they want to create a box office or a ratings bonanza, rather, they should put Espinosa and Navarrete together. Do you guys remember? It wasn't that long ago when Valdez and Navarrete fought the first time. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a palpable electricity in the hardcore boxing community. I remember I was over at What Rapids for the live round by round. People were excited. And I remember somebody said, hey, man, you usually don't see this type of stuff because we're used to, back foot bitches fighting and all that. This was a fight where you knew there were going to be fireworks. People were excited. So I'm thinking if ESPN wants to treat the fans to a shootout, all Mexican shootout, like people expected with Valdez and Navarrete, man, Espinosa, Navarrete, that's the way to go. But
that would be very entertaining. I agree. But as far as Keyshawn, we're back at 135 again.
Mm-hmm.
Until Navarrete shows me he can be even a viable contender and opponent at 135, if you put a lightweight up there, I'm going to pick the lightweight. Because again, that would be his fifth weight class, and that might just be too much for him to handle. He may only be able to win a vacant belt off of a number one pretender, and to put that feather in his cap. And it's not a knock against him. Again, like you said, whether it's due to their speed or not, whatever it is, only special fighters have gotten 4 or 5 titles.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just may not be within his grasp. Part of it's his age, part of it's wear and tear, part of it's how much weight he's put on, and he may not be able to carry it. So if you put a lightweight up there, until he shows me he can be a viable contender or possible force to be reckoned with at lightweight, I'm picking the lightweight.
There you go. I agree. Now, that's the thing, fellas. I'm taking Shakur Stevenson and Keyshawn Davis off the table right now because Shakur Stevenson is with Matchroom, rather. So that fight, I don't know how easily they could make it. And Keyshawn Davis has a fight already penned. So it's between Oshaki Foster and the Lifestyle as Navarrete's biggest threats. What do we say? What
Lifestyle.
do we go with? Lifestyle?
Lifestyle.
I'm going to edge Lifestyle.
There you go. I'm gonna
edge it.
There you go. I'm gonna go with that too. Then I'm gonna, it's a democratic way, and there you go. Navarrete's biggest threat is his own self. Sorry, I had to go with
late night. Those late night runs to the, to those los taquerías, right?
Danger.
That's what it is, man. He's his own worst enemy. For if we have to use the cliche, so. There it is.
Hey, when I work on the road, man, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I see them. I was like, yep, I'm stopping.
Yeah, man. It's difficult. When you're hungry and you don't want to waste time, you go, you know what? Let me stop at a fast food joint or whatever. Speaking of fast food, a guy who does appear to be on the heavy side sometimes, although his fans keep saying, no, he easily makes weight, is the next guy. And, well, actually, before we get to the next guy, what did people say in the chat? People were saying, Donovan McNabb said Navarrete will whoop Foster.
Salute to Donovan McNabb. I didn't know he was in the chat. He's a great quarterback, man.
Well, there you go.
He really was.
We got all the celebrities here on the BD Boxing show. Super Sardonic says Kid Austin. Come on, Kid Austin. Well, first of all, he's got to fight Shakur Stevenson first. King KO says Navarrete is not ready for 135. He might never be, by the way. Arthur Vargas Lujan says Navarrete is docking Oshaki Foster. I don't know how he came up with that. Epadukua says recognize what's up. Windy City says that boy ate the whole rosca and didn't leave none for the team. he ate the Christmas rosca, and I never liked the roscas, by the way. Butcher, did you ever enjoy that?
Yeah, they were nice.
It's like just to explain to people what the rosca is, like a fruit pie, right? The round fruit pie from Mexico.
It's not pie. It's a little bread. It's
Well, I
bread.
mean, it's not pie, but I know they call it fruit. In the United States, it would be akin to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the difference. Fruit pie is different, no?
I don't know. But anyway, how do people? I always,
Who
La
cares,
Rosca,
man?
the Rosca always scared me as a kid because they put that little fucking white toy in there, the figurine.
The way Jesus.
Yeah, how many people
Little baby Jesus inside the rosca, which is a piece of bread, and then if you find it, it's supposed to be like good luck or something. But I always thought like some kid's gonna choke on that shit.
That sounds like
totally, yeah.
That's what they do in New Orleans. They put a baby inside. Well, basically, it's a giant cinnamon roll they call king cake, and then they decorate it with the colors of Mardi Gras, which are yellow, gold, and purple for royalty. And but again, the consistency is just a giant cinnamon roll. And if you get the baby that's supposedly inside the king cake, it's supposed to be good luck.
Oh yeah,
Well,
exactly. Yeah.
You know, the actual Hollywood elites actually put a baby inside.
Come on, man.
I'm gonna go back to that joke. What's grosser than gross? 10 babies in one trash can. What's grosser than that? 1 baby in 10 trash cans.
Come on. Jeez, you know what? We're going to move on here. I don't know what's the matter with you guys. We're going to get shut down here. I'm actually going to shut it down before we get shut down. But we got to move on here. We got to get into the next guy, the next contestant here, or analyst, whatever we want to call it. And that is the face of boxing, Gervonta Tank Davis, campaigning at lightweight. He's fighting, then he's not fighting, then he's retiring at this year, then he's not. I mean, who knows what's going on with him. The first threat that we were able to identify for Shakur Stevenson, now 135, we're talking about Shakur Stevenson. Fellow undefeated fighter, very quick. Guys, what do you think?
I think his biggest threat right now is his hairstyle. Have you seen it
come
lately?
on, man.
Somebody might confuse him
Like a person that's in that.
for a young lady. So, you better be careful there.
But I mean,
Shakur,
yeah,
Shakur could bore him to death and beat him on a decision. Yeah, that could happen. That could happen. He's got the size. He could definitely out jab him, keep distance from him, beat him on points. Right. That's the real threat that he can give him. Outside of that, nothing else.
Well, I mean,
someone wants
Chief.
Go ahead.
Let's take a look at the dimensions, just for more clarification. Tank Davis is short for the division, right? At 5 feet, 5.5 inches tall. He's 30-0 with 28 knockouts, so he has speed and power. But I guess a guy like Shakur Stevenson, who's listed as 5'7", or 5'8", just as quick as Tank Davis, good at controlling the range, good at stinking out the joint, like Rick and I said. Well, what do you think, Chief?
So, someone did an interview one time after that dismal performance that Shakur did when he just totally tried to avoid contact and combat. And said, but the point is, when he wants to get out of the way of a shot, he can get out of the way of a shot. So with Tank more likely being quick but not as fast, and with the fact that Shakur can move as fast as he wants to get away from something, help me out, guys. When's the last time Tank has really walked a guy down who wasn't there to be hit to begin with? Okay, yeah, he walked down Barrios. Barrios was there.
Mm-hmm.
So when has he had to chase after someone, cut the ring off, and that's gonna require stamina. Now Shakur's got the stamina to move around and dart in and out and do 10-yard leaps to get out of the way of fights because punches, because he's gonna make sure he doesn't get punched. He's got quick hands. He's got a combination of quick hands and fast hands. He can pot shot you or he can throw combinations together. I don't want to shortchange what Shakur can do because he does have talent. It's just not aesthetically pleasing, but he does have talent. So he's fast, he's quick. When he hits hard, it doesn't hurt you, but look what he did to Valdez. He beat Valdez up. Now, Valdez he doesn't know how to find range against a rangy fighter. So it was tailor-made for him. The situation is the fact that Tank could be somewhat made for him. You've got to reach advantage. You're faster. You're at least as fast, if not faster. You can move away of his shots to where he's going to be reaching for you. And then if you choose to be on the back foot for a while using your lateral movement, attempting to do the Ray Leonard versus Marvin Hagler, which of course it won't be that that skillful. But if he's doing that to try and make him run him down, is Tank going to have the energy to chase him down for the first 6 rounds and then still have anything left for the second half of the fight? Because he's never had to do that before.
Mm-hmm.
He's had trouble making weight in the past in some of these other fights. He's had trouble, regardless of what anybody says. He's had conditioning situations here and there, something Shakur's never had. So am I picking Shakur to be an absolute threat? No, because I really don't trust his chin, or if the fight gets tough, what he's going to dig deep and do. But at the same time, Tank's never faced someone as elite as himself in his natural weight class, and he's never faced anyone that can match him with the intangible speed and accuracy and everything else. So I can see this being a threat. I just don't recognize it. I don't see it being an entertaining threat, but I can still see it being a legitimate threat.
Right. Very, very excellent points, number one, because I've thought about this fight for a while now. I think it's a fight to make at 135. I don't think it would be terribly entertaining, although I said the same thing about Usyk Fury, and the first one exceeded my expectations. So perhaps this one could as well. You never know. We can only hope. But everything you said is true. There's 2 flip sides to that coin. Is number one, Tank Davis, the first time, and perhaps one of the few times that I've seen him really put pressure from the first round on, was against Frank Martin, his last fight. I was actually pleasantly surprised to see him put the earmuffs up and try to go to work. However, that fight was still very, very close. Some people even had him losing. But of course, if you saw the momentum of the fight was shifting, Tank Davis was starting to take over. But that left us a lot of people wondering, saying, well, wait a minute. If Frank Martin could give him so many problems, what about Shakur Stevenson, who knows how to control the range better, who can fight in a negative style, in that ass style, and do it comfortably and not panic? He's also taller than Tank Davis, like you said, rangier. So that would probably be bad news for Tank Davis. But then other people say, well, the flip side is Shakur Stevenson, when he gets hit, he runs. And when he ran against Edwin De Los Santos, it was a very uneventful fight. And depending on the judges, maybe if they prefer Tank Davis's pressure or whatever, or maybe they're in the bag, I don't know, for whatever reason. If there's not much going on, maybe a couple of judges give it to Tank Davis. And that's all she wrote for Shakur Stevenson. So I could see both things happening. That's why I'm intrigued about the fight. Although I do think they would probably try to market this as some sort of Sugar Ray Leonard versus Tommy Hearns type of affair, and it's not. Both guys are nowhere near what those guys were. But it would still be one of the most anticipated fights for me, just from a stylistic point of view, to watch. But yeah, that's what we got with Shakur Stevenson. And I know Recognize would want to see it because it's Puerto Rico versus the United States. That would be a very intriguing one for Recognize right there as well. So
you sure Tank's not Puerto Rican?
He's probably like Afro-Rican or something. Remember that term that we were talking about years ago? Afro-Rican. So, or maybe he's Cameroon.
With his new hairstyle, with his new hairstyle, he looks Puerto Rican.
Come on.
Show the picture. Put the picture on it. Show it to everybody.
All right. Well, let me try.
You look like people I know. He looks like Tito now. Like, hey, what up, Tito?
Tito from the neighborhood.
Yeah,
Tito
exactly.
from El Barrio. Hey, Tito's back. I'm trying to find a picture of Tank Davis's latest hairstyle, which I think it's fake. I think the guy's trolling. I don't think that's his real. Let me just show it here to people. All right.
They're trying to say he's putting on a.
He's putting on a wig. Is that what you're saying?
I said, are you trying to say he like had the hair weaved?
Maybe. Listen, I'm going to show it. I found it.
Okay.
Look at that.
You look like you straightened it out, like he blew it out.
It's got to be a wig. It's a wig. He can't. You know how long it would take to grow the hair that long and then get it all straightened out and everything? That can't be him. He's got to be trolling.
Well, I mean, he already had braids and stuff, right? All he'd have to do is find a way to brush it out.
He already grew his hair.
That looks a little too fine, though, to be the same hair as what he had in. Okay. Anyway, moving.
For an Afro Anglo, that it would take a lot of work to get. You'd have to get that, like Malcolm X, the conch. You got to get that conch. And I don't think he did that. It's got to be a wig or it's photoshopped. I don't know. Anyway, got to keep going here. So Shakur Stevenson, that's one of the threats right there. The second threat for Gervonta Tank Davis is the 140-pound division. People have talked about it. he's already moved up once, although there's a big asterisk to that win when he fought Barrios. He put a rehydration clause on the guy. Tank Davis's fans say that he should not be fighting 140 because it's unfair to Tank Davis, seeing as how he's a natural 135 pounder. He's short. I don't know. They're making a lot of excuses and giving us a lot of reasons why he shouldn't challenge himself at 140. But guys, what do you think about the 140 pound division? You got guys like Jack Catterall. You got Matias, Teofimo Lopez, Puello, Alberto Puello. What do you think? Do you think the 140 pound is a threat to Gervonta Tank Davis?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think he doesn't in there.
A lot of guys won't be dehydrated too.
Yeah, exactly. We're talking about a real fight at 140, not how many fights did he have at 140? I think only 2, right?
One.
Oh yeah, Ryan Garcia wasn't at 140. That was a 135. Yeah, only one. So Barrios and Barrios said that there was a rehydration clause.
It was 136, right? The Garcia one. So technically,
it was a non-title fight, but it was well under 140.
Look how big Barrios looks at welterweight.
Yeah, man, exactly. You know, he was fighting at 140 and with a rehydration clause. Yeah. So no, that wasn't a real 140 fight for Tank Davis. So yeah, we haven't really seen Tank Davis at 140, to be honest.
That's true. That's absolutely correct.
And against Teofimo Lopez, people are saying I posted a poll a few weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, whatever. Who would win, Tank Davis or Teofimo Lopez at 140? And Tank won by almost a landslide.
Yeah, I don't know who's voting, by the way. I've seen some weird results for the polls, and no, I'm serious. I've seen you put up some interesting polls, and we've gotten back some interesting results. Like Shane Mosley versus Tank or something like that. I think people picked Tank. I don't know. It was just weird stuff.
What, at 135? Are they insane?
Yeah, 135. Yeah.
Look, in my lifetime, there's 3 lightweights that can't be challenged by anyone other than each other. That's Roberto Duran, Julio Cesar Chavez, and Shane Mosley. Done. Everybody else is entertaining against them. They are the dominants. Anybody else?
Because they haven't seen Shane Mosley at 135. All they remember is that Shane Mosley at 147, 154.
The only reason why I don't put Oscar De La Hoya in there is because he wasn't there long. And a lot of the guys had to move up from 130 because there really wasn't a lot of overwhelming talent in the division while he was there. Mm-hmm. He was a tough guy to beat there, but he was only there for about 2 years. And so of the guys that were at the weight for a long time that established themselves, Chavez, Duran, Mosley, and a sentence.
Now, yeah, that's a good breakdown there of the lightweight division, of the past lightweight division. Now, the another potential threat for Gervonta Tank Davis at 135 could be a double whammy. It could be the winner of Baranchyk versus Keyshawn Davis, because again, Keyshawn Davis really electrified the boxing world last year when he knocked out Lemos, and Baranchyk, like we said earlier, has a win over Navarrete, who's one of the toughest guys out there in around those divisions. So they're going to be fighting each other, Davis and Baranchyk. If Davis wins, he's an undefeated American with a title. And we know Tank Davis likes to look for the least threatening guys out there usually. And it could be just what the doctor ordered for Tank Davis, a guy who's, yes, he's got a title. Yes, he's got a lot of electricity behind him in terms of what he did last year. But he's also inexperienced, young. We don't know if he can take a punch. We know Albright rocked his boots in that fight they had in 2023, I believe. So, guys, what do you think? Do you think the winner of Baranchyk Davis could pose a threat? Oh, and by the way, Baranchyk, excuse me, I can't forget him. He knows how to control range. He's got very good footwork. He shuts down a guy's offense the way he did against Navarrete. So what do you think about the winner of that fight possibly being a threat to Tank Davis?
I have to see it. I have to see how effective they are against each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what if it's a boring fight and nobody does anything, you know?
Could be a lot of posing. Could be now the talent and the hype behind Keyshawn. If he really wants to prove a point and he lives up to that talent, especially against Baranchyk, okay. Now I'd be more willing to start to pick him against other people. I think he's being rushed a little bit. They talk about him a lot in this area because he's from here. I haven't really got a good gauge on him. All of these guys that used to be the 4, I call them princesses because they're not even queens for what they've done with their careers. They were at 135. They're between 135 and 140 now. Shakur was at 130 at the time. But Davis is kind of mentioned around there. They're flat-footed. They're not as athletic as the guys before. They don't really knock people out. They don't have. They do. I mean, Davis does, but the rest of them don't. They're not really as talented as the guys of yesteryear. As far as athleticism, that doesn't mean they're not talented fighters. They don't have other intangibles, but being light on their feet and Shakur, for instance, I don't even consider him light on his feet. I consider him very athletic when he's jumping out of the way of combat, but not when he's trying to like just stay on his toes. I.e., there's 4 fighters used to do it: Vander Holyfield, Terry Norris, Oscar De La Hoya, and Eric Morales. They would bounce on their toes right in front of you for like 2.5 minutes in a round. So you couldn't hit them with anything too hard to knock them off balance because they weren't grounded when it happened. It's really harder to push a person off their balance when their feet aren't on the ground. And that's why they bounced on their toes so much, because you could hit them with something and it might, jar them a little bit, but it's hard to knock a person off balance when their feet aren't planted. It doesn't make sense, but it's true. That's why they did that. They jumped up and down so that you couldn't really hit them with anything clean and throw them out of the rhythm. They were in a rhythm and you had to try and throw it off. These guys don't do that. None of them do. And so the long and short of it, the long I've already said, the short of it is the fact that I don't think these guys have the intangibles to really be able to be as good as the lightweights before. Meaning, in Keyshawn's case, he's somewhat tall and everything else, but he's kind of flat-footed. He doesn't do anything amazing with his footwork. He's not explosive with his angles or anything. So I'm not positive he's going to be a threat to anyone. Doesn't mean he's not good and talented for today. It just means that what we're used to with boxers being able to accomplish with having all-around skills, this whole generation doesn't have. It's not just him.
Well, part of that, I don't want to get too much into that because it's a long story. It's a long subject. We could spend hours discussing. But what the big problem is that these guys don't fight as often. I mean, you look at Keyshawn Davis.
That's also a huge problem.
He had a stellar year in 2023, but he only fought 3 times. If this was the 90s, he would have a guy in his developmental stage would have fought 5 times at least. It's not the same thing. They're not developing the same skills, which is why I think it's ridiculous to expect him to fight Tank Davis. But again, that's the modern standard now. And I don't know how he's going to look against the Baranchyk, because Keyshawn Davis' style is he's overly reliant on the shoulder roll. And I don't know if that's going to work against a southpaw. I've never actually seen him fight a world-class southpaw. I think Pedraza was a switch hitter, but I don't know if he spent the whole fight as a southpaw. I have to rewatch it. But be that as it may, the winner of that fight could potentially be a threat for Tank Davis at the lightweight division. And the last threat that we were able to identify for Tank Davis, low impulse control. This is a guy that's been seen in public, assaulting his baby mama. He got into it with his betrothed, or whatever you want to call her, in 2023, to the point where some people say that he got into a fight with her. He was suspecting that she was going to run to the cops and accuse him of beating her. So what he did, allegedly, was smeared feces all over the bathroom window and on his toothbrushes. Some people, like Amir Leader, claims that he probably, in his haste, shoved that toothbrush up his keister to dab it with feces. So I don't know. It seems like, and then on top of that, he's running into pregnant women and then fleeing when they're asking for help. He gets a slap on the wrist by the judge, but then violates his terms of parole or probation, whatever, and gets sent into the slammer. And then he has the goal to complain that it's the judge's fault that she has it out for him. So this dude is obviously out of control. Just recently, he said he's retiring in 2025, and then he says, "I'm not fighting." So he leaves everybody in doubt. You think that's a good promotional tactic? Hey, people want to. Already, it's a hard sell, that the Lamont Roach fight. Now he's saying on Twitter and Instagram, "Oh, I'm not. The fight is off." What do you think that does to people who want to travel, have to make hotel arrangements, and all that? I mean, this dude is out of control. So what do you guys think? His low impulse control, is that his biggest threat, or what do you think is the biggest threat here?
It's between that and 140. If they keep him anywhere near active at least 2 fights a year, then the low impulse control is going to be somewhat controlled. So I'm going to go with 140. Because he's not going to be able to do enough rehydration clauses for an entire division. He's just not. And those guys are big. They're bigger. They're big. They're bigger junior welterweights than years past, and they're very talented in their own ways. And Not to mention, like you said, has to put rehydration clauses on 140-pound fighters in order to quote unquote even the playing field.
Mm-hmm.
If he goes up to that division where he's not the champion, he's not going to be able to do that to everybody. So I go at 140, but his low impulse control may shoot him in the foot while he's at 140.
But you know what? That's a combination right there. I don't know if we can go with a recognized or Bucho. What do you say?
140.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, 140. But that low, that lifestyle that he lives is really dangerous too. So it's hard to say. I have a theory. I think the reason why he dehydrates fighters is because he himself is not in the greatest shape he could be in.
Very excellent point. Theory. I would actually 100% support that one. So since I'm not going to have, well, remember when Ryan made the comment? Did you eat breakfast this morning at the weigh-in? Because he knew that Tank was having trouble also.
Right.
So Tank puts his rehydration clauses on some of these guys because it does literally even the playing field. Because if they get to rehydrate right, they're probably in better shape than him.
That's interesting.
When he said, "I just want to make things fair," I'm like, "What the fuck do you care? If you're in great shape, you're not worried about the other guy."
Exactly.
So
that little weight difference. He thinks.
You be in the boxing game. You've been in the game for a while. You know how to throw your hands. Or when you're in great shape, you're just mentally confident.
Exactly. That's very well said, man. That is a great way of putting it. You guys are articulating things better than I could today. I don't know what's going on with me.
Oh, you got it. Yeah.
I'm getting sloppy. I don't know what it is. But anyway, listen, the point is, okay, so you guys said 140 pounds. That's his biggest threat. And I tend to agree, even though there's some, like I said, some viable threats at 135. But be that as it may, you guys are saying 140.
Danger, danger, danger.
And that is Tank Davis's biggest threat right now. He can't be humping weight divisions because of his height. And even his fans admit it because they say, oh, he's a little guy. So he's got a whole bunch of threats, and maybe that's why he's not fighting any of them. Because, I don't know, they want to keep him undefeated for some reason. They think he's that big a draw. Let's go to the next name here. And by the way, the fellas, don't forget to hit the like. Hit the like. It really helps us out. All right. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the show. Let's go to the next name here, and that is Terence Bud Crawford. Bud is undefeated. Some consider him the best fighter in the world. Struggled mightily against Israel Madrimov in his last fight. The problem with Bud Crawford is he's 37 and he only fights once a year. He by virtue of his accomplishments, he is one of the best fighters in the world, but some people have made the argument that he tends to be a little bit overrated, that his skill set doesn't really live up to the accolades he receives, and that he mostly gets by on natural talent. I don't know if that's true or not, but I guess we're going to find out here. The first threat that I was able to identify for Terence Bud Crawford is Virgil Ortiz, the Mexican who enjoys eating hamburger helper and other things. Virgil Ortiz is undefeated. He's a power puncher. He finally got some 12-round experience against Sergey Bohishuk in a fight that some people say he should have lost. What do you guys think about a potential Virgil Ortiz-Terence Crawford fight if they were to fight right now?
A definite threat. He's younger. He's hungry. He has skill. He's not just a Johnny-come-lately puncher. He has overall talent. And again, youth goes a long way, but so does experience, which Bud does have. To say that his accomplishments are kind of watered down or diluted, and some of the other things that you said earlier, Mr. BDA, kind of goes for the realm of what sport is today. It's just what it is. There's just like that 147-pound division that he was in, even though he didn't fight the guys when they were quote unquote at the top of their game. At the top of their game, they weren't that good. Keith Thurman wasn't getting knockouts once he won the world titles against the upper echelon. Danny Garcia never had a significant win over any welterweight. The only significant win Sean Porter had was Danny Garcia. And so then Spence fights all these guys and looks okay against most of them. Not great, but okay. And Bud demolishes Spence. That's the welterweight division. Ta-da. 140, he was the name. There wasn't anybody else there. 135, he only won one belt. I've been his biggest supporter on this panel for most of his career, and I'm not jumping off the bandwagon. But historically, looking at everything, no, he hasn't done a whole lot. But what was there? We don't have Tommy Hearns tonight, Cortez and Donald Curry's and stuff like that throughout any of the divisions he's been in to challenge himself with. So he's had what he's been there. Back to Ortiz. Live, powerful opponent. Don't know if he's got the experience to be able to pull off the tricks that Bud's going to manipulate and get away with, like a lot of grappling. But if anyone can do it right now, if there's a sheer sign of someone who can pull off an upset of anything we've done tonight, Ortiz has that chance against Bud.
Interesting. Very interesting. I mean, he's a physical fighter, explosive. He's got power. He's about, I think he's about Terence Crawford's size. He's 5'10", whereas Crawford is 5'8". So Crawford, as we saw against Madrimov, fought somebody his own size. Actually, Crawford was still bigger on fight night than Madrimov. He struggled mightily. Recognize you want to add something about the potential Ortiz-Crawford fight?
Yeah. I would still give Crawford the edge to beat him. If anything else, it's experience. But Ortiz is trying to do something that I like in fighters. Yeah, he's challenging himself. That's one. Number two, he's chasing. He's fighting Madrimov, who just gave Crawford a really good fight. So he's going to try to one-up him. Those are dangerous fights. Madrimov is a pretty skilled fighter. I would say well above average skill fighter in terms of boxing technique and IQ. He did a lot of good things against Crawford. I'm not going to go through it on this breakdown, but I think a lot of people should look at that fight and how he was able to be successful against Crawford. But yeah, I give him a threat. He's a big threat. He's definitely a big threat. I give him something like a 30% chance, 40% chance to beat, more like 30% chance of beating Crawford right now. I think 154 is his limit. Take his age into consideration too. He's I want to say 37, something like that. So he's in his late 30s. This is when usually you taper off, and you start to look very human. And you think about his run at welterweight and then his one fight at 154, and you say, man, that shit is night and day. So yeah, I would say Virgil is a huge threat. I would still slight edge Crawford, but I would say if Crawford was to challenge himself at 154 because of his age, somebody takes him out.
Well, that is interesting.
Did he floor Madrimov at all? Because I don't remember.
Say again?
Did he floor Madrimov at all? Because
No.
I don't think he did, but I don't remember.
No.
He had him tired.
No.
He tired him out. Yeah.
So he goes on this knockout streak forever, and then he goes up to 154. Given fourth weight class again, a lot of weight to put on. Of course, I won't say we all, many people out there have been calling him a weight bully for a long time at 135 or 140. So he's probably at the weight division he's been at for a while. And now, like you said, it's not just his age, but he's close to the max of the weight he should be at. And just because of the size and strength of these guys, he's now being challenged. So, again, I've been his biggest supporter for a long time. Still am in many facets throughout different parts of his career. At this stage, he's not challenging himself. He's not trying. He's fighting once a year, and now he's looking normal. He's not looking anything like what the hype was before. So, and like you said, recognize Ortiz has challenged himself by taking on the guy that made Bud look ordinary. So if he blows him out, it's going to be like, okay,
Well,
I definitely deserve to be in the conversation because I just took on the guy that took you the distance.
Well, I mean, you guys mentioned Madrimov. Ortiz has to get past Madrimov first, but I do still think a second threat here for Crawford would be Madrimov. Again, this reminds me a little bit of the Bam Rodriguez versus Christian Gonzalez scenario that we started the show off with, because like Christian Gonzalez, Madrimov is not really that big a name. We know that the event Crawford-Madrimov ended up losing money and it did not sell out. So this was a type of fight that was only possible with Saudi money, them subsidizing the fight. So I don't see Crawford agreeing to fight Madrimov anytime soon. Especially since, first of all, we don't even know if it could happen because, again, Madrimov has to get past Ortiz first, and that's a 50-50 fight right there, maybe even a slight edge to Madrimov. But what do you guys think? Do you think that a guy who's 30, how old is Madrimov? I think he's older than, what's his name? Ortiz. Hold on, let me just check it out. Madrimov is 30. So he still has about 2 years before his peak ends to improve, whereas Crawford would be 39 in 2 years. Crawford is not going to improve. He's only going to get worse from here on out. So what do you guys think? Do you think Madrimov could still be a threat to Crawford, especially a year from now, maybe even 6 months from now, if they were to fight again?
If Crawford's boxing mind is anything like I gave it credit for before, Madrimov doesn't have a chance to might have a chance to make it look bad, make it competitive or more competitive. Not enough. And when people say it was a very razor close fight, and I say more competitive, most people automatically means loss. No, what I'm saying is the fact that he might make it still challenging in different ways. And I know that Crawford's not Usyk or Loma, who are very cerebral fighters that know how to break everything down, and they beat the fight in their mind before they ever get in the ring. Mm-hmm. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that Bud is a smart fighter. He does know, has learned something about Madrimov already. What's Madrimov going to bring to the table that's going to throw Bud off in a rematch? If anything, it'll just be a stinker because Bud will neutralize anything that Madrimov tries, and it may not be impressive, it may not be entertaining, but he'll still beat him.
Yeah, that's
so I mean, was 2 years from now.
What
BDA?
Are you asking?
2 years from now, I don't see Bud in the ring.
Right. 2 years from now, if Bud is in the ring, he's 39 versus Madrimov's 32. Assuming that Madrimov is more experienced, he's successful in his run. Let's just say hypothetically he was to go in there and beat Ortiz in a really good fight. Yeah, I would take Madrimov to beat old man Terrence Crawford, especially that when Terrence Crawford was on a run of, 11 straight knockouts, he's the guy who stopped that and arguably could have won that fight. Arguably could have won the fight. So I would say 2 years from now, Bud is older. But listen, if Bud Crawford was to challenge himself to his fullest at 154, mark my words, he won't come out undefeated. He will get beat.
Oh. Well, we shall see.
He will lose.
Well, I got to tell you,
he's not going to get through. Not going to get through. The guy, Ortiz, Madrimov rematch, Boachuk, and the guy that knocked out what's his name?
Tim
Tzu. He's bro. You're delusional if you think that he's gonna go through all of them. You're crazy.
No, he won't.
Yeah, he's gonna be. By the time he fights all those guys, assuming he could get through all of them, right? You're talking about a man who's pushing 40 and is gonna be wear and tear in his body. And those guys are younger, bigger, and I assume stronger. One of those guys are gonna check him and put him in his
only way he can hold his own with them is
when the young man puts the old man in his place. One of those guys are going to do it.
So all I'm getting at, and not picking him to beat any of them, is when the fights go inside, because he knows how to grapple and he's an intelligent combat veteran, that's the only way he holds his ground. Even these bigger guys, he's going to know how to use his leverage for them. They're not going to throw him off too much. But we're talking boxing.
They just outwork.
We're talking boxing. And so, exactly, when they don't take it to the inside and they just stay outside, I can see him, even though he's not a Philly shell or a Winky White type fighter hiding, behind the high guard, I can still see them, like you said, outworking him and just like taking the power off their punches. And for lack of a better way of putting it to where people can wrap their mind around it, Calzaghiing him. I'm just going to just completely shoe shine all night long. And like you say, and especially in 2 years, we're talking about right now, but in 2 years, when he's 39 and almost 40, yeah, that's the kind of style that'll beat him at that weight, because he's just not going to be as fast, and they're going to be in their natural weight class.
When he fought Madrimov, he didn't separate himself from Madrimov. In other words, levels above. I saw them more or
Right.
less at the same level. And he's
Yep.
already, that was his first fight at 154 with guys his size. In this case, he was actually bigger than. And he was neutralized when you compare him to what he did at welterweight. He was actually absolutely neutralized. And so, yeah, I don't see that getting better in 2 years. I don't think he challenges. I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking, if he was to challenge himself at this point of his career at 154, bro, I'm betting 154 gets him. And it doesn't matter who it is. One of those guys are going to get him. Absolutely.
154 pounds is a loaded division, perhaps the best division other than featherweight. And even below that, a guy who should be fighting at 154 right now is a third threat that we've been able to identify, and that's Gervonta Davis. Even though his stock has fallen because of his penchant for avoiding fights, and then, of course, looking horrible against the Karen, way too hittable. But he is a big guy. Like Terence Crawford, he's long, he's got speed, he's got power. What do you guys think about his threat level compared to the other guys we mentioned?
After the second Karen fight, I'm not. There's a point in time I was saying he's the next great fighter. You guys heard me. I've been high on him the whole time. I think I brainwashed Dirk into thinking he was unbeatable. But I saw some athleticism that I just haven't seen out of a lot of guys. And a lot of you guys questioned what I was saying, and I pointed out the fact that, Roy Jones and Ray Leonard and Floyd Mayweather didn't get the same kind of criticism on the way up, fighting the same kind of tomato cans he has. But when Floyd finally fought for a title, it was against Genaro Hernandez. Now, I don't consider Genaro Hernandez anywhere near a great fighter, but he was very much accomplished. And Floyd clearly showed he was on a different level than him. Boots hasn't done that yet against a legitimate welterweight. If Karen is the first legitimate welterweight he's fought, he didn't do what Floyd did to Hernandez. Different weight classes, I get it. The analogy of the old man, the new man coming in to make a point is what I'm getting at, and he didn't do that. Plus, right now, he's still at 147. We have no idea what he can do at 154, and we've already pointed out in these lower weight classes that when you move up just a couple pounds, it can make a huge difference. Now we're talking 7 pounds of weight between welterweight and 154. So I have a lot of questions about Ennis, more than I ever did before. Probably just as many questions as everybody else, and I can't say that he's going to do anything to Bud, even with his youth, until he proves that he can take on people. Someone like Karen, he should have blown out based off of the height.
Right.
Karen may be tougher than we give him credit for. And I'm going to give all the praise to Karen for making the tough fights the way he did. But Boots shouldn't have been challenged like that for the talent that he's supposed to be against a fighter of that caliber. And he was challenged that way twice. Now we're asking him to move up to 154 under some bright lights against the guy considered the top 3 pound for pound, who has accomplished way more than he ever has. Unless he can stay on the outside, if that fight goes on the inside at all, Bud's going to beat him. Bud's going to wrestle him around, beat him up, manipulate him, maneuver him, put him where he wants him to be, and then he's going to beat him up.
That's well said.
And that's
right
at
there.
37. And that's at 37.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, just real quick, I was high on Gervonta Davis when he beat Abdeu during the pandemic. I rarely overrate guys. They go, oh, he's the next big thing, whatever. I was just saying, oh, let's keep an eye on this dude. Subsequently, his performances have left much to be desired. So out of Madrimov and Ortiz, I think Ennis is leading the rear when it comes to being a threat to Terence Crawford. But you never know.
He's the caboose.
Right. The caboose. Losing the caboose. Another threat. Oh, by the way, sorry, Reckons, did you want to say anything about Gervonta Davis before we move on to the next threat?
Yeah, so if the question is right now, what level of threat? I give him a little bit above average. In other words, if I was to, match them up together, I would give Boots somewhere around 30% chance. And that's because that's just maybe less than that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe around 20-25%.
You're really big with the percentages today.
I like doing percentages.
No, you don't. I've never heard you say anything about percentages before. All of a sudden, now you're like 15%, 20%.
I'm constantly changing my game, BJ. You know how it goes.
All right, that's good. That's good.
But yeah, I would still, significantly favor Bud Crawford if you're talking about right now. But we don't know. I mean, maybe Ennis is doing himself a disservice by staying at 147. Turning down fights at 154. Maybe he's doing that thinking he's going to get a big fight at 147 eventually, maybe a guy like Ryan Garcia, or he's just afraid of 154. Who knows? But I think that if you're just judging right now, he's a threat, but I think he's the lesser at 154 because that's where the fight will take place.
Correct. And the only threat he has is staying on the outside. If it's on the inside, it's like I said, he gets maneuvered, wrestled around, and beat up. There's only money fight he has as at 147 is Ryan Garcia.
I'm going to allow him to keep him on the outside. So I'm just being realistic on that. He won't be able to.
It is interesting that I always, for some reason, I assumed that him and Crawford are the same height. Ennis is taller than the guy by 2 inches, according to the stats that I have here. So, Jaron Ennis, I long said, I don't know how he makes 147, and perhaps it would benefit him to move up to 154. Speaking of moving up in weight divisions, the other threat that we've been able to identify for Terrence Bud Crawford, and that is of his own making, by the way, is the face of boxing, Saul Canelo Alvarez. He's been mentioning that fight. Then there's rumors that maybe it is going to be doable in 2025. Crawford definitely wants the payday. He wants to fight Canelo because if beating him would certainly catapult him into that stratosphere that he so greatly desires to be in, which is an all-time great top 10. Guys, what do you think about Canelo's chances as a threat?
I mean, I would favor him. I give him Canelo 70 to 80% chance of beating him.
Whoa!
Depends on what weight they try to make it at. But we know
Canelo's not dumb. There's no way you're draining Canelo. He already knows what it could be.
I was leading into that, but you are absolutely correct. Canelo's going to be able to say, I'm drawing the line here. Okay, so if I get 168, he's going to say no more than 165, and I get to rehydrate as much as I want. Something along those lines, you know what I mean? But Bud is doing one of two things. Back when Mayweather was calling out Shane Mosley and Oscar De La Hoya, I used to say he was trying to buy a loss. That's what I thought Roy Jones was doing against John Ruiz. Turns out they pulled off those victories. But if they didn't pull off those victories, much bigger paydays they've ever received before. I mean, Mayweather made $9, and I'm not going to harp on this too long. Mayweather made $9 million against Colombian dude that beat Zab Judah. And the synopsis of the whole thing is against De La Hoya. He tripled that amount. He made $25 million. So if he would have lost, he didn't care. He would have made $25 million.
Argentina,
bigger than he would have made before. Yeah. I'm sorry. Thank you, Argentina. We know who we're talking about. I'm just trying to sum things up. The synopsis is the fact that Bud's doing the same thing. If he can find a way to pull this off, fantastic. Cherry on top. Right now, I'm looking at, I want a very high 8, if not low 9-figure payday. And Canelo's my only chance to even coming anywhere close to either one of those. Do I think it's going to go 9 figures? Absolutely not. But I think he'll get well over 25 million. And that's what he's looking for.
Well, Chief, if the Sheik is behind it, he wants this fight, perhaps more than any other. He's got the pockets and the treasure chest to make it happen. So for a fact we would be looking at Fury Usyk type money.
Which was what?
Maybe for Canelo will get, close to or maybe as much, but I don't know if Crawford would get that much. Crawford would get clearly the biggest payday of his career.
Oh yeah.
Time 3 or 4 times, but he won't. I don't think he'll crack that 100 million mark. I think he'll get somewhere no more than 50 million. And that would be shit. That would be the best payday of his career. But he's never faced nobody like Canelo, somebody as strong as that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still skillful enough, that he can bait you into a big shot with his upper body movement, how he, fakes you out, looks like he's gonna hit you to the body, catch you up top. He can still do that. And I've seen Crawford get hit by that very shot against Mean Machine several times in that fight, and I'm thinking to myself, Canelo could still do that, especially that Crawford's older. He'll be going up in weight. He'll be he'll be heavier on his feet. As the fight goes along, he'll eventually catch him. To me, it's a cash out fight. That's how I see it. It's a cash out fight for Crawford.
Yep. I mean, if Crawford is able to pull off the win, which is a huge. It's when I say maybe, if being sounds more likely, but when I say maybe if the fight even happening is what I'm getting at. Point being, let's pretend they're both 154-pound fighters for a second. Not much difference in size, huge difference in arm length. That's about it. Even with Crawford's ability to be able to grapple and balance himself with wrestling, he's not going to be able to out push and anything else Canelo, even if they were both at 154, because Canelo's just that thick and strong. So mano a mano in the natural weight divisions, this is not Bud's quote-unquote natural division. He started at 135. So Canelo's going to be big enough and strong enough to be able to handle anything Crawford puts at him, and then he can still pot shot, because that's how he fights anymore. He waits for you to overextend, and he comes up with a really big explosive punch that jolts your entire body. And Crawford, even if they're both 154-pound fighters, I don't see how he takes those for 12 rounds. I'm not saying a knockout. I'm saying it keeps him honest enough to where he's going to take less risks, or he'll go in and try and make it dirty through grappling, but it's not going to be through anything aesthetic. It's not going to be through anything through combinations. It's not going to be anything through boxing IQ of his fists. It'll be the outside stuff you do of trying to body the guy around to open him, and Canelo's just going to push him around.
Yeah,
so I don't even consider this a threat, because I don't see it's a realistic fight. Of the four guys, of a realistic fight to be made, I consider Ortiz the biggest threat. But the unwinnable fight for him, biggest threat, Canelo.
Well, let's get that to that then, because we have one last thread here that we've been able to identify via our technology that we're using here, secret technology, and that is Father Time. Some of you guys were mentioning that the fact that he's only going to get worse with age. He's 37 years old, fighting in his, what is it now, fourth weight division? Or fifth, something like that? Fourth, yeah. Okay, so it's not looking good. Every day that passes by, his reflexes start dwindling, so does his speed, which he relies on to catch guys. So with that being said, fellas, what do you say is Terence Crawford's current biggest threat right now? And let's, if you want to keep it within the bounds of realism.
Okay, I would say Father Time. Canelo's his threat. That's it. It wouldn't be Father's Time, your greatest time, whatever time. Canelo
time
is his biggest.
Canelo time.
At any time.
Yeah. What are you saying? Canelo time is it? Okay.
Canelo time, yeah.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, I'm not sure even when Canelo was at 154 if Crawford could beat him, based off the fact that this is, even if he was a weight bully at 135, 154 is not his natural fighting weight class. It was Canelo's at one point in time. He fit comfortably there. Well, let me rephrase. He was big for the weight class, and he was strong there because look, he's gone all the way up to 175. He's a bigger guy. He's thicker, bigger boned, stronger. And even though boxing's not about that, it's about using all these other intangibles. Okay, but if you can't nullify those intangibles of that Canelo has with being at 154, then you're more likely not going to win. If you can't use it against him, then you're more likely not going to win. As much as I've always liked Crawford when he was younger, I don't see him ever beating Canelo at 154, let alone at a weight higher than that. And so, like Rick and I said, if you want to use Father Time, you're talking 2 years down the road. We're talking immediately of the threats that are on the screen of tangible people, Canelo.
Well, there you go. Even Recognize even said Canelo in a way. He said Father Time, but he said realistically, I mean, in terms of who beats him in the ring, if indeed he fights Canelo, which is what Crawford wants and appears to be what the Sheik wants as well, then yeah, absolutely, Canelo would be the biggest threat. So I'm just gonna to keep on moving, because we got 3 names left to do here. Let's stick to Canelo Alvarez as his biggest threat. That is the biggest threat for Terence Crawford. Certainly a guy that he would be, because all the other 154 pounds, he would probably be the favorite going in with the odds makers. Not so with Canelo.
Danger, danger, danger.
That is Canelo. And by the way, IBFP made a fantastic video where Crawford was complaining again about how, oh, everyone's against me, but I'm going to show you my greatness. And IBFP he was showing examples of how many professional fighters are picking Crawford to win against Canelo, to beat Canelo. So why is he saying that the world's against me when a lot of the boxing establishment is picking him to beat Canelo Alvarez? So it just, again, more lack of logic there from Terence Crawford. We move on to the next name here, and that is the face of boxing, the aforementioned Saul Canelo Alvarez. He's in his 30s now, appears to be slowing down, one punch at a time. That seems to be what he enjoys now. He's 34, so soon to be in his mid-30s. That is past his peak for sure. He still has enough to comprehensively beat young guys like Munguia and Berlanga. But again, he hasn't had a stoppage since he knocked out Caleb Plant back in 2021. So there's a lot of questions about if he needs to push the engine against a young, competent fighter who's still in there with him and taking rounds. Will Canelo be able to pull it off? So the first threat, however, will be lack of fan interest. Why? Why, people are saying, well, the face of boxing, how can fans not be interested? Surprisingly, the Berlanga fight did well at the pay-per-view, with the pay-per-views and at the gate. Even though Berlanga was unproven, I suppose maybe it was the Puerto Rico versus Mexican thing. Maybe that played a factor in. But right now, there's not a lot of options for him. Benavidez moved up to 175. So Canelo, who's always chasing titles, even if they're worthless, he always needs a title or something to make it interesting for him. So now that Benavidez doesn't really have a title at 168, why would Canelo move up to fight him? Then you get Christian Mbili, but again, he's not a big name either. And I don't think many people would give him a chance to beat Canelo. So again, the fan interest isn't really there. There's not that many other opponents at 168. 160 pounds is a barren wasteland. There are no names in there at all, unless you count Erislandy Lara. Maybe that rematch would sell with the Cuban community. But other than that, then you got Terence Crawford. That's the fight they're talking about in terms of making money. So fellas, what do you think about the lack of interest and the lack of viable opponents right now for Saul Canelo Alvarez?
I think Father Time, and this is the guy who's, he's not your average 34-year-old. He's at 34, he's basically a 20-year pro as a boxer, He started at 15. He's definitely had a lot of fights. There's definitely some wear and tear, and there's some signs of him slowing down. I think his biggest threat, stylistically, a fight that you can make, is a guy like Benavidez, but like you said, he moved up to 175. Because a guy like Benavidez could outpoint him.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Benavidez' style, he throws a lot of punches. Canelo throws, like you said, one punch at a time. I would still favor Canelo to beat him. But if you look at the fights that could be made, I guess his two biggest fights that he can make right now is Crawford and Benavidez. If you ask me who's the bigger threat, obviously I'm going to go with Benavidez. But there's so much uncertainty because this is the guy who moved up to 175 just to be a contender, basically, in Benavidez. That's what he's fighting for. So we don't even know if he could go back down to 168. So Canelo's kind of he's kind of stuck in a hard place of his career right now in terms of making big fights. Mm-hmm. Because the viable threat, the more logical threat is Benavidez, but there's so much uncertainty with that dude moving up to 175 pounds.
In order to move quicker, you mentioned age. It's not so much, well, I guess you could say age, but we'll call it injuries here because he did get hurt after the Golovkin fight. He stayed out of commission for a while. We know that he's always wearing knee braces. Well, not knee braces per se, but those things there with the stabilizers or whatever. So, Jimmy was one of the few guys who called it about 3 years ago that, hey, his knees, the rumor is that his knees aren't doing all that well. Perhaps one of the reasons why he went to Germany to try to get some procedures there done. So injuries too, that's another thread right there that we've been able to identify.
Yeah, because he's had a long, extensive career. Like at 34, he has the career of most, guys in their 40s. He's been fighting since he was 15 years old. What were you doing at 15? You definitely weren't boxing as a pro. So
That's right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and he's been going 12 rounds. I mean, the John Ryder
That's bigger
fight.
guy. That's the thing. He's fighting big men.
Uh-huh.
You know, even if you're winning pretty convincingly, there's a lot of because I would imagine if you ask Canelo, did you get into the habit of overextending your punches in power? He'll probably be, if he's honest, he's like, yeah. Why? Why is that? Look at the guys I'm fucking punching at. Right? When you see a bigger guy in front of you, you naturally load up on more punches. That's wear and tear. Especially when you've been doing it for a long time.
I mean, also the fact that his last 5 wins have gone the distance. And like you said, he's pushing strong guys around and all that. That's about, 60 plus rounds that he's been going at? Even though maybe that's why he fights the way he fights now with the sledgehammer approach, because he doesn't want to overexert himself. Or maybe he can't. Again, if he can't overexert himself, then that is a big threat right there. That's why we're highlighting the injuries, because if he ever fights a guy that's going to push the limit, and we saw that against Bivol, he couldn't keep up with Bivol. He was tired. And some people are going to blame the... I was reading, I remember somebody re-mentioned that it's because he was vegan in the build-up to the fight. I mean, come on. Out of all the excuses that I've ever heard, the fact that he supposedly went vegan in the build-up to that fight is ridiculous. But again, right. What do I know? But the other threats that I've been able to identify here are at light heavyweight. Beterbiev and Bivol. Bivol already beat him. So there was talk for a while about a Canelo rematch with Bivol. I don't even know why that would be necessary. He shouldn't be fighting at 175. He's too short, too small for those guys. And Bivol already showed that it's a horrible stylistic matchup. And then on top of that, Beterbiev, who's just a stronger, more skilled Canelo in terms of putting pressure and all that wouldn't end well for him. So that's what I've been able to identify there as major threats. Lack of fan interest, that could cause his career to dwindle, especially his box office appeal, injuries, and the top 2 light heavyweights in the world.
Yeah. He's right now in like his final stages of his career of like in terms of making the biggest fights he can make, and he can still win. Outside of that, like you said, he goes up to 175. How big are those fights? How big is Beterbiev if he comes out of the rematch again as the winner? Bivol, how much interest would it seems like those fights would be high risk, low reward, and the bigger option seems to be Benavidez because people have been talking about it for such a long time, and then you got obviously Crawford.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah,
Crawford's probably more lucrative.
So financially, Crawford's going to be the lucrative one because the Turk wants to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
If Beterbiev convincingly wins this time, I'm not saying he didn't the first time, but if he leaves no doubt in the rematch with Bivol, there's a sellable point because, he beat the guy that beat Canelo, but he's not Bivol. He's shorter. He's not the same guy. They're a little closer to the same size within dimensions, maybe not bone density and muscular thickness, but height and reach, they're closer to the same. So that's still a sellable fight, but I really, if Beterbiev wins ultra convincing in the rematch, Canelo's not going to want that fight anyway. Like it doesn't even matter the reward, the risk isn't big enough because at this stage of his career, he knows in the back of his mind his health's still got to be down the road. And that's a big, monstrous puncher against a naturally light heavyweight in the weight class he doesn't belong in. And he knows that because he wasn't exactly beating Kovalev before he knocked him out. He lost to Bivol, and now he's going to be taking on a bigger risk if Beterbiev is able to carry this off. Now, who's the bigger risk? Per se, all these are legitimate risks at this stage of his career. Nothing's exciting. He's taking long to recover from injury. The 2 guys you have up there, unless you're going to put someone else up there, BDA, are legitimate threats to physically beat him.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what I would pick in this situation based off of the fact he's not a real light heavyweight.
Right.
And there's nothing really left at super middleweight for him. So
this reminds me of the Roman Empire, where the peak of the Roman Empire, they were expanded. I mean, across North Africa, the Middle East, the UK, Spain. they couldn't maintain that empire. And it's the same thing with Canelo. Is that he went up to 175. Yeah, at some point the Romans would get close across the Middle East, and they would get a town over there or a kingdom, and then they would lose it again to the Parthians or to the Sassanids because they couldn't hold it. And the same thing with Canelo. He already won a title at 175. But there's just if he would have stayed there, he would have taken a loss sooner rather than later because he cannot stay at 175. He can't campaign there for too long. So, like Chief said, in terms of actual opponents, I think, Beterbiev and Bivol are certainly the tough ones, but I don't think they're realistic. I don't think he's going to fight those guys, especially if the Crawford fight comes to fruition. So what do you guys think? I would go with lack of interest. The fact that he doesn't have a lot of options right now for a big box office fight. All right, that's what I'm gonna make an executive decision and then go with it. Bucho, what do you think?
Right. Side with lack of interest because there's with Benavidez being gone from 168. I don't care who else he fights at 168. I'm not interested. There's not a name that you're going to say it's going to make me salivate going, yep, that's the fight I want to see.
Exactly.
And if he's not going to 175, then lack of interest is his biggest enemy. Because people may not do anything else. And if there's no demand.
Maybe you could say Canelo fucked it a little bit with the Benavidez thing. But Benavidez really fucked up, bro, by going to 175. And then on top of that, for nothing. Really nothing. Just to be a contender.
Just to look like shit.
That was the biggest. That was Canelo's next big fight where there's a legitimate threat there. And you could say Crawford, but is he really a threat, or you just hyped on his name? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I'm talking about a legit threat. A guy who you can actually see. Like I said, if they were to fight right now, I still favor Canelo. But you can actually see where he can win the fight. I don't know.
Yeah, man, there was a lot of money to be made there for Benavidez, but there was a lot of money to be made for Benavidez, but his team, I don't know, they dropped the ball big time on that one. We're gonna go with lack of fan interest. That's really the big threat, because the whole thing about Canelo is he wants to make money, he's a big star. But what happens if there's nobody there that interests the fans? No matter how big a name you are, you're only as big as the fans, the interest that the fans have in the fights. And if they have no interest, could be troublesome. Could be troublesome there for old Canelo. So we finally detected his threat, or his biggest threat right
now. Danger.
And that is lack of fan interest. Danger. All right, let's move on. We got 2 names left, and then we're done. The next name here is Artur. Wait, what the hell? There we go. Artur Beterbiev, the king, at 175. We said Inoue's name is apropos, the monster. But if there ever was another guy who deserved the monster moniker, the Mata, that is Artur Beterbiev. Because this dude, think about it. He took on Dimitri Bivol, and I still think Bivol edged it. But man, he had Bivol in as much. I've never seen Bivol have to move around so much in the last couple of rounds as he was against Beterbiev. This dude is a certified beast, and you're thinking, well, a beast like that, there might not be that many viable threats. Well, let's see if we can find some. First of all, Dimitri Bivol, like I said, I thought he edged the fight, and they're going to rematch in February. Hopefully that fight comes through, because you never know. But Beterbiev, somebody could get injured, whatever. What do you guys think about Bivol as a threat? And I'll be right back. You guys take over.
I still say Bivol is a 50-50 threat. If I had to go by this last fight, maybe I still slight edge Beterbiev. But realistically, he's probably more like a 50-50 split. I thought Beterbiev won. I thought he edged out the fight, but the fight was close enough. Also, Father Time, and look at all these injuries he's had throughout his career. That's something to take into consideration when viewing him from here on out.
And I'm sure that's going to be a factor that BDA is going to bring up. But and I 100% agree with you. But I have a strange feeling because of his age and his injuries, that's going to be one of the opponents they're going to bring, or one of the factors they're going to bring in soon.
Yep. So, I would say Bivol's a threat. Father Time's a threat. He's got a lot of threats on him right now.
Well, yeah, because Benavidez is young and flexible and durable, and he's fighting at that weight class now. So, but I mean,
Yeah,
the only one we were presented to talk about before BDA had to take his quick break is Bivol. But there are a number of threats there based off of his age, his amateur. Because guarantee you, he had. Well, I don't know his number, but I'm guessing 100 or more amateur fights.
Wait, I know Mirage is listening, so I got to do my Mirage impression. Benavidez.
What about Benavidez?
Benavidez. Are you recognize? Are you mud? Are you a peanut? Benavidez.
I have no idea. Yes.
That's my. Hold on. That's my Mirage impression. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
I'm sure I've talked to him before, but
I just came back and I heard the impersonation of a gay guy. What's going on? What? All right, listen. Are we still talking about Bivol here as a threat, or?
I mean, I gave Benavidez a honorable mention too, as a threat.
Yeah,
to Beterbiev.
We basically talked about Bivol and jumped through what we perceive to be everything you're about to bring up for his threats. So yeah, we couldn't stay on top. We jumped around.
Okay. Let's bring up another one. Age. The guy is 39.
Yeah, that one.
He's been injured. I mean, come on. 2021, he got injured. 2022, he got injured. No, excuse me. 2022, he got injured. 2023, he got injured. 2024, he got injured. He's due for another injury, this maniac. I don't know how he trains. Father time, I suppose. But it seems to me as if his style doesn't rely too much on speed. I mean, he's got timing, he's got power, he's got this skill to cut the ring off, he's got good defense. So how much would Father time affect him, do you guys think?
Well, it's already affecting him based off the fact of how often he's out of the ring due to the fact of injury. Your body doesn't regenerate as much as it gets older. And it's been showing in his past several years of constantly having to take excess time to recover from each fight. That's why he gets at most 2 fights a year. I don't remember the last time he had 3 fights a year. I'm not saying he never had that at the world title range, but pretty much when I saw him knock out Tavoris Cloud, I thought this guy's going to be great. And then I didn't hear from him again for a long time because he had these long layoffs in between fights as a prospect. And so now I'm not saying those were due to injury. I don't know. We do know that he's a very devout Muslim and he does truly observe Ramadan, in which case when he does that, he does not go through training or try anything else like that. So that takes up, I don't know how long. I'm not Muslim. I'm not a theologist. I don't know how long that takes, but that does interrupt his, the rhythm of how many fights he's going to have a year. So that being said, that is a factor on why he's fought so little, but not to where he's only fought at most twice a year. That being said, if you break down a year of like 4 seasons, which is 3 months each, with Ramadan taking probably, let's just go ahead and say 3 months, no disrespect to Muslims if I'm wrong, that's still 3 fights he could have a year and he only has 2. Right. So the recovery time and everything else, he's not overly active. He is extremely durable. Look at the build. He's incredibly powerful. We know this. You don't knock out a former world champion in your 6th pro fight unless your power is real. And he knocked out Tavoris Cloud in 2 rounds in his 6th fight. So the power is real. Now, can he still deliver the punch anymore with some of these guys being more athletic and younger and able to recover faster? There's your question. Which leads back to Father Time being his biggest enemy. He turned pro at 29.
Looks like BDA, exactly like him.
Yeah, I've told you, people, when I spar, people come into the gym and they don't see my face because I got the headgear and everything. They go, "Hey, Beterbiev sparring? What the fuck?" And then they take it off. They go, "Oh, hey, who is that dude?" But so thank you for reminding me of that. I don't like to talk about. I don't like to talk about it too much because then people go, "Oh, this dude, who is he?"
In other words, BDA, you're an uglier version of Beterbiev, right? And Beterbiev is already ugly, so.
Well, I bet you I got a bigger dick than he does, though, so I make up for it with that. But listen, this isn't about me. This is about these dudes, the threats. By the way, Beterbiev turned pro, I think, at 29. He turned pro, and for a guy who's been
I think you might be wrong on that. No, I'm sorry. I think you're right. He's either
of course
29,
30. Of course I'm right. I mean, that's why I was laughing. We said, "I think you're wrong." I said, "What world do you live in where Mr. BDA is wrong?" But I was going to say, for a guy who's been pro for 10 years, he only has 21 fights. Again, that's because of the mismanagement that he had early on, or in the middle of his career, rather, and then him getting injured so often. So for him, it's about quality over quantity. Now, there's a guy out there, another threat, and that is in the cruiserweight division. Before he moves up to another weight division, Jay Opetaia, who's fighting tomorrow, I believe, right? Is it tomorrow or in a couple of hours maybe in Australia?
Wednesday. Yeah.
Right.
Tomorrow.
So, but what time is it going to be here in the East Coast?
I have no idea. I don't even know. Wednesday means, okay, if you have, like, it's happening now.
It's happening now, yeah. All right. Well,
So
Jay
Wednesday,
Opetaia, look, listen, southpaw, he hits.
I'm watching the fight right now.
Imagine if it is, man, and we're all missing it. But Opetaia, he's fighting a guy who's 6 feet, 6 inches tall, but who lacks a lot of experience, so who knows how that's going to go. But Opetaia is a tremendous puncher at cruiserweight. And then on top of that, he's got speed to boot. Guys, what do you think? Do you think if Beterbiev were to move up to cruiserweight, do you think that's a viable fight? And how much of a threat would Opetaia be?
Oh, I think Opetaia would knock him out.
Oh.
Yeah, he would knock Beterbiev up.
And by the way, remember, Matrix, that Beterbiev is listed as 5 feet, 11 and a half inches tall, whereas Opetaia is somewhere around 6'4". So that would be the biggest guy he's fought as a...
I don't know if Opetaia is 6'4". I think he's more like 6'2", 6'3".
Oh, yeah, excuse me. Yeah, 6'3", I think. Yeah.
I think he's somewhere around... He doesn't look taller than Usyk. He looks maybe an inch shorter or about his height, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
He packs a lot of power. I do believe that there's a reason why Beterbiev fights at 175. And even if I'm wrong about that, you've been fighting at 175 for a long time. And now you're getting older against a younger, bigger, probably naturally bigger than you, faster, throws the punches very fast than what you're going to be used to. Yeah, he gets knocked out. Opetaia will. I think he'll give Opetaia problems for sure. But as that fight goes on, I think Opetaia finally catches him with some big shots and gets him out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to the factor that we've been mentioning with some of these weight classes all night, that when people put on a certain amount of poundage, it changes their entire game plan and everything else. You're talking about a guy moving up to the 200-pound max weight limit from a guy that's been fighting his career at 175. Now, I don't know what he fought at the amateurs off the top of my head, but we do know some of the people he fought, and they were been between the light heavyweight, cruiserweight, and small heavyweights as pros. If anyone knows how heavy 81 kilograms or 91 kilograms is, that's where Beterbiev fought in 2012.
Recognize you're good with conversion.
That's 201. Yeah.
Okay, so he's 200 pounds. And I'm willing to guess it was a lean 200 pounds, knowing him the way we do.
Oh, yeah.
My guess is as he trained for stamina, he didn't really burn muscle. He just trims down. Again, we don't know exactly what moving up to a cruiserweight would be. And so that this one's more of an intangible than a threat. But obviously 26-0, 20 knockouts, 6'2" with a 76-inch reach. And he's 29 years old versus Beterbiev, who's 39 years old, 10 years older, 5'11", 73-inch reach. So you're talking about reach advantage for a younger guy who's naturally bigger. I don't know of a threat because there has to be the logic that the fight could possibly happen for me to consider it a threat. But I wouldn't be calling that if he gets by Bivol, I would not be putting this guy on the top of my list to fight next.
Well, a couple of things about that, piggybacking of what you said. Beterbiev, that's why some people in the Discord, I think Shazar is one of those guys, he calls Beterbiev a weight bully because he says, hey, this dude used to fight at cruiserweight essentially as an amateur and then made his way down to 175. I don't know. I think he seems to be the average height of a light heavyweight is about 6 feet tall. So he's a little bit below average for that. he did compete against Usyk the 2 times they fought in the amateurs, and Usyk is 6'3". But then again, that was the amateurs. That was a younger Beterbiev, and that was a only 3 rounds. But then the flip side to that coin is Opetaya struggled mightily against the best opponent he's ever fought so far, which is Maurice Brady's, and he's about 6'1", I believe, or thereabouts, and he was able to give Opetaya everything and all he could handle. So perhaps Beterbiev would manage to be highly competitive, but again, at this age, 39, taking on a guy who's taller, bigger, hits harder. Seemingly, I mean, you never know. Maybe Beterbiev at that cruiserweight. Imagine cruiserweight hits harder or cruiserweight that he does at 175. I don't know, but it's a big ask for him, and that is a big, big threat. Now, the other threat, this comes as a package, a double whammy. The winner of Benavidez Morel, because we know that the winner probably, I think that the winner becomes a mandatory for one of those belts, right? That Beterbiev is holding, or potentially Bivol would hold.
The WBC BDA.
You know, man, I don't pay attention to these titles anymore. They're a joke. But does anyone know? Is anyone aware of which one's the?
But either way, he's a. I think whoever wins between Morel and Benavidez, it becomes a mandatory for. They got. I mean, Beterbiev's got all the belts, so it's one of those belts.
Okay, so I think let me check. Was that Chief?
He's got it. If he wins that, he's got all 4, so it becomes mandatory for one of them. No,
exactly. Morel is the WBA regular champion, and Benavidez is the WBC. What a joke! The WBC interim champion. So, I suppose
could become mandatory for both.
Exactly. Well, maybe not. Maybe
the
not.
Champion has never. I've never known them to be mandatory for the super champion because with the WBA's crazy rules. So I'm not going to say that can't happen. I don't remember that. So I'm going to go out with recognize and say it's more likely going to be the WBC because there's an interim championship which would force a mandatory.
Well, let me say this right off the bat. Let me say this right off the bat. I've been watching because I'm gonna drop couple of videos on for free on Patreon regarding Benavidez Morel. I've been rewatching both guys' fights. Morel has a clear lack of finesse and guile as a professional. He has not been developed properly. He's being rushed into this fight. I don't think he beats Benavidez. I could be wrong. You know, it wouldn't be the first time, but from what I'm seeing, I'm pretty confident Benavidez is going to take it. However, Morel is a big puncher, and Benavidez has not fought a big puncher in a good long while. So I don't know how he's going to be handling that power, especially at 175. Be that as it may, Benavidez at 175, what do you guys think? Let's say it's Benavidez who wins. How much of a threat would he be to Artur Beterbiev?
Depends on how he wins. He hasn't been in the division very long. We got to see how you said yourself that even though Morel's got a lot of hype behind him, he's been rushed, and so he's just past being. He's a contender prospect, and so this is trying to prove whether he belongs at the upper echelon of the world title level. And if Benavidez dog walks him, then guess what? Benavidez is a threat to anybody at the division because he's acclimated to the weight. Because he was running through people, with the exception of Caleb Plant. Mostly because he tried too hard in that fight, not just because of Caleb Plant's skills. He tried too hard to try and look impressive, and instead of using his jab and setting things up, he tried to walk right through him, and Plant gave him too many angles. That being said, at 175, if he dog walks Morel, even if Morel's not overly polished yet, that's still a statement, and a major one. And it shows that he may have just needed one fight in the weight class to acclimate himself, and now he's good to go. If he's good to go, he's a very tough man to beat. That doesn't mean that Canelo can beat him at 168 or Beterbiev can't beat him at 175. He's a live threat, and yes, if he walks right through Morel, it gives the perception that he is a legitimate threat.
Mm-hmm. Can I say something right off the bat? When people go Benavidez, some people try to give Benavidez credit for beating Gvozdyk, and I'm thinking, you look at that fight, he couldn't put a dent on Gvozdyk. He really he was quicker than Gvozdyk and beat him to the punch all night. And I'm thinking, well, that's what you're supposed to do if you're the younger guy. But I did not see the power from Benavidez that he showed at 168. And that's because now he was fighting guys that were bigger than him or at least the same size. And so the power appears to be gone at 175. So he's going to have to rely, like I said, on those young, youthful attributes. And against Beterbiev is not like Gvozdyk. he's not as tall as Gvozdyk, but he's as good a boxer as Gvozdyk. He's got underrated boxing skills. He hits way harder. So Benavidez is not just going to be able to land easily on Beterbiev. Beterbiev has a very good underrated guard. So I really don't see Benavidez having too much of a chance against Beterbiev. Now, again, he is younger and Beterbiev is getting older. Like we said, Father Time is one of his big threats. So maybe Benavidez in combination with Father Time, but I don't know, man.
Well, let me just put, because I've been mentioning different guys from different eras on different things that happened in their career. Remember when Shane Mosley moved to 147 and he fought Rivera, I believe it was, the guy that most people fought and gave up. Yeah, him. Mosley did not look like a world beater in that fight. Then he beat Willie Wise, and then he beat Oscar De La Hoya, and he acclimated himself to the weight. He needed a fight or two. Benavidez may have stepped into a division he belongs in against guys more his own size, and they're going to challenge him, or he needed that fight to acclimate himself to the weight. This fight's going to show which one of those it is. If it's still a fight where he still wins, comes out on top, and even gets a knockout, but he works a lot harder than he did down at 168 to get it done. He has to set it up and use strategy and not just bulldoze these guys. Then it shows the fact that, yeah, this is the way he deserves to be in, but he's going to have a workman horse mentality to get it done. If he blows Morrell out of the ring, we know he's acclimated to the weight, because that's what he was doing at 168. So if he pulls the Shane Mosley of, okay, I didn't look that great in this fight, but now I'm used to the weight, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I think.
But if he has to work hard to get it done, then it's going to be challenging for him to beat anybody at that weight.
This fight is going to be a bit of an illusion for people because Benavidez is going to beat Morrell. That's what I'm expecting. And Morrell is a prospect, essentially. That's what he is, a prospect. He's an overhyped prospect. So people are going to some people are going to be highly impressed by the Morrell fight. But I don't see that translating well into how he would do against Benavidez or Bivol. I mean, excuse me, against Beterbiev or Bivol. So with this Morrell fight, I'm not all that interested in it, but it's better than nothing. So we'll see what happens. So, but what do you guys think then? So, what's the biggest threat to Beterbiev right now, out of all the ones we have on the screen here?
Well, if he chooses to move up in weight, he's going to struggle against anybody at any prime fighter at cruiserweight, because cruiserweight's 200. So you might as well say that I don't know how to pronounce that young man's name. Might as well call him the biggest one. But then again, if you could say if he was in his early 30s, Father Time wouldn't be sneaking up on like this, and he would have done well at any division. I'm still going to stick with cruiserweight.
Yeah, I'm going to say the gym.
The gym or age is what you're saying?
Yeah, because the gym actually knocks him out every time for at least the
gym has beaten him a couple of times.
That's
the gym's undefeated. The gym's undefeated.
Well, I don't know then. I mean,
I think Bivol. I think Bivol is his biggest threat right now.
Yeah, because I mean that's the next fight, right? That's the next fight. I mean, this is a difficult one. Beterbiev does have.
If they weren't fighting in a rematch in February,
exactly.
I might say something different. But since they're fighting in February, and Bivol did almost win that fight, we
need Bucha too.
Yeah, I'll give him a very good. Bivol did some good work in that fight, man. I watched it over again.
Okay, but he might win that fight. He's not beating that cruiserweight. End of story. He's not beating that kid.
Right.
And so if we're putting him
in,
then other than the gym, like you said, in jest, but also in fact, because he does get injured while he's training, which could also be linked to Father Time, the only person on that screen that we know he's not walking out undefeated against is the cruiserweight.
By the way, Gene
he's just
Ryu
not big enough at his age to be able to present the problem that he needs to present there.
Gene Ryu in the chat says his biggest threat is his taint giving out on him. I mean, come on, you think he's gonna pull his taint again and then have another fight reschedule? I don't know. I'm gonna have to agree with. But Bucho, what do you say? Well, I don't know if you can break the tie, and please don't mention Beterbiev's taint. I've had enough of that.
Damn it! I don't know what to say now.
Come on.
I don't know why people are talking about him moving up to cruiserweight. I think at this point, if he beats Bivol, I think he's going to retire. This guy is about to break down again. But his biggest threat is probably cruiserweight. Yeah, it is.
All right.
Because I think he can beat Bivol. I think he can beat anybody at 175. But 200, it's now 200. It's a different story.
Yeah, because I mean, he already
Yeah.
proved he can beat Bivol, but it's also a very tough fight. Which different judges, it could go differently the next time. If it plays out exactly the same way it did the first time, different judges could see it another way. So, I mean, I'm gonna. But like Chief said though, this is about the biggest threat, and Bivol is the immediate threat, but it could go Beterbiev's way. So in other words, what Chief said was he can beat Bivol because he already did it one time. He ain't beating Opetaya. So I'm gonna
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree and say Opetaya, but I think recognizes two was right because this could be time in combination with Opetaya. Maybe a younger Beterbiev could have beaten Opetaya at cruiserweight. I don't know, but for the moment, we're going with the Aussie, and that is Jay Opetaya, the big threat detected for Artur Beterbiev.
Danger, danger, danger.
That's right.
How about dope? Grass, hash, coke, mescaline, downers, Nebutalol,
Is he Australian?
Yes, he is. I thought he was
from
from New
New
Zealand
Zealand.
the first time I saw him. I thought he was Maori, but he's Samoan. Australia.
Well, Samoans are not from Australia.
I knew that. I didn't know that. All right, let's go to. I mean, I always get him confused. Samoans, Maori,
It's
Hawaiians.
a country in itself.
There you go. But technically, they are Pacific Islanders, right?
Yeah.
All right, there you go. So I
Yes,
made up for
they
it
are
with that. I made up for it with that fact. All right, now last name, last character here in our analysis of biggest stars, biggest threats, Alexander Usyk. Like I told you guys, I saw the Dracula movie, Nosferatu. They made the vampire look like Alexander Usyk. So now every time I look at Usyk, I remember Orlok and I go, I don't know. He's going to go into England and start fucking random women. So Usyk is considered invincible now, like Orlok. And people are going, well, he already beat Fury. He already beat Daniel Dubois, who's the next big guy or the next big thing in the heavyweight division. He already beat Joshua twice too. So who's next? You know, it's you think slim pickings. Aha, but here, this is the boxing debate arena. We can come up with a couple of threats. So let's go with age. He's 38, right? Didn't he just turn 38?
I'll be 38 in the 17th.
On the okay. So in about 10 days. I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again real quick. Most heavyweights last long because they rely on their punching power, and that's the last thing to go. Usyk is not a regular heavyweight. He relies on speed, reflexes, movement, and that is dwindling. Even though he doesn't really move that much anymore, he does pressure guys more than anything. But it's still he's at a disadvantage when it comes to these big heavyweights. So, guys, what do you think about the age factor here? Would you be surprised to see Usyk?
I'm gonna consider his age, but I'm gonna say Vladimir Putin. Nah, that's a bad joke. I'm not gonna say that. Sorry. That was a bad.
Well, you think Putin personally is gonna try to attack this guy?
I'll just say that's a bad joke. I was gonna go somewhere with that, but I decided I'm not gonna do that. Yeah, his age, bro. His age is the Father Time would be his biggest threat. He already beat the consensus top two heavyweights of his generation. He already beat those guys, and he beat them twice. So it wasn't a fluke like he just won one fight. He beat him. He beat both guys twice. So from here on out, can he? Yeah, listen. Like people are talking about Daniel Dubois, a guy he already beat,
right?
Because he knocked out a guy that Usyk beat twice.
Mm-hmm. But wait a minute, recognize. What if Dubois technically should have won that fight? Because what if it wasn't a low blow?
Yeah.
I mean, listen, you're talking about my opinion. That was a low blow. You don't stop a fight on a shot that's borderline to underneath the belt. You don't stop a fight doing that. And even if it was technically a clean punch, that doesn't mean that Usyk gets counted out. Remember, Usyk kind of played to the referee's call. That's all he was doing, at least in my opinion, right? So I don't even consider that. He stopped Daniel Dubois with a jab. That's what I remembered. So
yeah, that's
your fact. That's your fact.
No, that's his truth.
Okay, well,
that's
the fact.
That's my eyes.
Here's the fact.
Right.
All right.
That's your truth. Oh, you mean the truth?
Yeah, like Recognize said, we're talking about an extremely cerebral, smart fighter. He noticed the fact the ref waved no knockdown. So was he hurt by the shot? Yes. Was it a low blow? People are going to argue that forever on what they think they saw from the angle and all the different camera angles and what have you. Just like the Phantom Punch, did something really land or not? People are still arguing about that today, almost 50 years later. So we come down to the fact that the ref waved it off, and Usyk saw that. That's the reason why he didn't get it. If he would have seen a count, he would have found a way. He would have pulled himself. He would have crawled over to the ropes and pulled himself up like Melcher Taylor did against Julio Chavez. He would have done what he had to do to get up. Would he have survived? We don't know. What we do know is the competitive spirit he has, and he would not have laid down and stayed down for a count. He would have found a way. He would have pulled the ref's pants down to try and stop the count if he had to keep from being counted out. He wouldn't have just laid down like that.
I've done that before, by the way, but not in a fight. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, Roger Mayweather did it to pronounce, or the other way around. Anyway, point being, it's been done before. So he would have done something to try and get to his feet. He wouldn't have just laid down, oh, that hurt too much, I'm going to stay down. That's not what happened.
Right.
He got hit with a shot. He saw the ref wave it off. He took the time to recover because he was allowed to. That's the end of that story. When he got up, Dubois had a chance to follow up on it and capitalize and keep going. He failed. End of story. That's not my truth. That's the truth.
No, that's
did not win the fight.
That's your truth. Don't come here telling me it's a fact.
So to follow up even further with where we're going right now, the reason why Father Time's in the league, we're talking about a guy who's in his late 30s who had 350 amateur fights at the heavyweight level. So how much time does he have left? Not much. He's beaten Joshua twice. He's beaten Fury twice. The guy that everyone says is going to take over the division that he's already beaten once, because a lot of people are on the Dubois bandwagon now. So there's nothing to do. He can keep going if he wants to, but he's a family man. He's made plenty of money to pass money to his children's children. He's proven the fact that he is a legitimate all-time great fighter by dominating 2 different divisions and probably the least amount of fights I've ever seen. So 2 divisions that are that drastically apart. We mentioned Inoue at the very beginning. Those weight classes are very close together. These 2 are very far. One doesn't have a limit, and the other one's, maxes out at right at 200 pounds.
Well, I gotta tell you, see.
Go ahead.
Well, that everything you just said, those are facts. Everything you said before that was just your truth. I'm gonna explain to you later what the difference. But yeah, man, I mean, the age could certainly be a factor, but it certainly hasn't been apparent yet. And he's already fought the best. So I think age, it could be a problem, but right now it's not looking like it. By the way, before we continue, shout out to Rafael Garza Jr. for his contribution by the Buy Me a Coffee app. And he says, has King Bucho seen the Clarissa Shields movie? He's asking, did you already see it, Bucho? Because he's expecting you to see it.
No, not yet. I'm waiting for moonshine. I'm preparing some moonshine. Gonna get shit faced. Then I'm gonna watch it.
You're gonna show up there with a weapon. You're gonna be armed, right? Drunk and armed.
Yeah, the grand finale. Yeah, because that movie's gonna.
Finale. All right, listen. Let's stop.
Is it playing over here? I'm gonna check if it's playing over here.
I'm pretty sure it's only playing in Michigan. Was that?
What's it even called?
I don't know. The biggest cunt story or something like that? I don't know.
I'll check it out.
We gotta get to the next thread here, and that is the Chinaman. I was gonna say Oriental, but that's politically incorrect. Zhilei Zhang.
Bang Zhang, Zhilei Zhang. Nigga, 中国人啊 about to enter the
Zhilei Zhang. I don't even know if he makes it past Caballero, though. He's got to get through that dude in February. But let's say he does. This dude is what, 6 feet 6 inches tall, 270 pounds. What beats speed, guys? Usually, what is it that beats speed? We were mentioning it earlier. Timing. And this dude has timing and power, though. Hey, okay, go ahead.
Well, okay, so timing beats speed unless your timing is speed. In this case, Usyk's speed is also timing, and he'll just offset
Zhang's timing. That's not to say Zhang's not going to have a moment or two due to his size. I'm not going to count him completely out, but he's just too slow to. I'll put it this way: superhero-wise, Quicksilver, the X-Men. What made him such a threat versus the other fast superheroes is the fact that he thought faster than they did. It wasn't just the fact that he was physically faster. He fought 6 steps ahead of them because his thought process was faster. Zhang may have timing. It's reactive and instinctive to the moment. Usyk's already 6 steps ahead of him. Both in speed and thought.
Chief had to nerd out in order to explain this. But hey, it's still a good explanation. I'll put it that way. And that's a good explanation right there, let me tell you. What does anyone else think about that? Zhilei Zhang threat.
I kind of agree. Yeah, Zhilei Zhang has a legitimate puncher's chance. But all the stuff that Chief mentioned, you know, the speed with timing, you kind of could figure out a guy like Zhang pretty early. Or I would think that a guy like what's his name, Usyk, can figure out pretty early and just outbox him. But he has a legit puncher's chance to like end the fight. He could punch Usyk with the hardest punch he's ever felt in his career.
Well,
as an amateur, as a pro, everything. Yeah.
Is Zhang orthodox or southpaw?
Southpaw.
No, he's a southpaw like him.
Zhang's a southpaw?
That's right.
Zhang is a southpaw. Yep.
Okay, how often does he face into the southpaw? Because I guarantee you,
there you go.
several times.
I think Glovatsky was the last southpaw he ever fought.
I don't think Zhang lands anything on Usyk.
Oh no, he
fought. You're right. I would agree with you. But if he does, man, and
now we're getting into the Wilder thing, you know. Well, no, he's better than Wilder. I'll give you that. You know, I mean, he doesn't throw like he's not as predictable.
He's better fundamentally than Wilder.
He can punch with both hands.
Exactly.
Though. He can punch with both hands.
Yeah.
That's interesting thing.
Yeah, if he lands, he fucks him up for sure. I mean, if Fury hurt Usyk, I mean, Zhang hits way harder than Fury.
But that's the thing, though, that
slap.
flip sides to that, flip side of the coin there. Zhang, I was rewatching the Parker fight. I don't know why, because it was incredibly boring, but that's what I do for you guys. When he dropped Parker the second time, he did it with a short right hook that caught Parker on the top of the head, and it just caused him to crumple, take a knee. I'm thinking, holy shit, that's scary, man, because it's a shot. You know, Parker was comfortable. He was getting comfortable. He's moving. He's like, okay, he can't hit me. I'm covering up here. He can't really hit me. I'm weaving. Catches a shot on top of the head. He goes down. Now, Zhang, however, did get out hustling in that fight. And Parker has quick fists, and he's nowhere near the type of fighter, either in speed or skill, as Usyk is. So if Parker could out hustle Usyk, like Chief said, and when you guys are saying, the rest of you guys too, is perhaps Usyk can too. So there would be the danger for sure with the power, but ultimately we've seen Usyk fight power punches before. So I think, especially since Zhang is very slow, like Chief said. So it's not like, he's got timing, but then Usyk has timing too and speed on top of that. So I think he's still a threat though. And that's what we're talking about here. Sticking to the script, another threat for Usyk is Martin Bakole. Just as big as Zhang, younger than Zhang, actually has a good jab, good straight shots. He took out an undefeated younger guy in Jared Anderson. Really just beat the crap out of him. To the point where now Jared Anderson, I think he's coming back and he's taking on no-hopers again. That's what Bakole made him do. Run back to fighting no-hopers. Guys, what do you think about Martin Bakole's chances against Alexander Usyk?
Puncher's chance. Again, comes down to that. Some punchers got better chances, right? I don't want to sound so cliche when saying that, but yeah. I think that he's a viable threat. He is.
I mean, wasn't Michael Hunter way ahead before the one loss he had?
That was a while back. Bakole. That was a while back.
Okay, I'm judging based off of improvement is what I'm trying to get at. So that was a while back. The fact that he beat Jared, I remember everything I used to say about Tank. Drops his hands, throws from his chest, feet balanced, doesn't turn into his shots. Everything I said that Tank has the flaw that a lot of he still has. That was Jared Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we saw Jerry Harrison knocking out test after test, and now when I say test, I just mean exposure fighters. And the form was terrible. It was just the fact he's a big guy, and the people he were fighting didn't have a chance. Now, when he did stand up against George Arias, however you say his name, 18-0, I get that, okay. But when he started, Charles Martin, that wasn't a real fight. And then when he, did step up against Bacoli, look what he got knocked out straight up. It was down down in round 1 and twice in round 5. I mean, doesn't sound like, well, first of all, I saw it, but on top of it, doesn't sound like he was prepared for someone that was really going to fight back. He thought he was going to get an easy fight. Now back to Bacoli. If Usyk takes him lightly, but you got to remember, when you have high boxing IQs like Usyk, Loma, Floyd, James Toney, guys like that, these upper echelon guys that this is what they do. They are boxers. That's all that. That's the only thing they're going to do for a living. That's not all that you are as a person. Everyone's got character, but that's what they live and breathe in order to make their living. That's not what Bacoli is. Bacoli may fight for a living, but his entire mentality isn't how am I going to survive in a combat sport. Usyk's is. So is he going to be able to outthink Usyk? He has a puncher's chance, yes. But when you're fighting a guy that's that much smarter, your puncher's chance is only when that fighter, meaning in this case Usyk, loses the lack of judgment because they do not respect or care about their opponent anymore. And guys like Usyk don't do that because they know what combat sports are.
Well, let me tell you something. You are right. Usyk is a consummate pro. He never overlooks anybody, and I would expect him to not overlook a big guy like Bacoli. I will say that people in the chat are saying, "Well, Bacoli is just another slow guy." I mean, I think he's quicker than Zhang. Definitely quicker than Zhang, and he does have a good jab. He throws straighter shots more often. I mean, he threw a lot of. At least it seemed to me he was more active against Anderson than Zhang is against comparable young guys like Hrgovic. So it would be a very difficult fight for sure. He's 33 years old, although he's from the Republic of the Congo, Democratic Republic of the Congo. I don't know how old he might really be. They tend to play around with the birth certificates over there. Could be in his 40s as far as we know. So maybe that the age advantage isn't as pronounced as we would be led to believe. That being said, yeah, Bacoli is a big threat, 6'6" tall, heavy-handed. I'm curious to see who they match him up with this year, and if he's even still around, winning by then, or maybe he takes a loss. I don't know. The next threat, and this is the final one, is a guy who already lost to Usyk, but who's had a renaissance since and has worked his way up to being the number 2 heavyweight in the world, and that is, or potentially number 2, Daniel Dubois. Guys, does the rematch go the same way, or what's that?
No, I said Dubois. Oh, we got a super coffee.
All right, before we get to that, then, before we get to Daniel Dubois, super coffee, shout out to Jin Ryu for his contribution with the Buy Me a Coffee app. And he says, Salute BDA and Bucho. I was out of the country in the last 2 weeks. I'm glad to be back to catch another live. Some shekels for a box of Trojans you guys can share. Keep up the great work. Well, first of all, I don't use condoms. I go in raw because I like to take chances. And but still, nevertheless, thank you for your contribution, Jin Ryu, and it'll certainly be put to good use. You'll notice that the internet didn't go out today. What do you think that is? Because we keep putting money into this to ever improve the quality of this show. So shout out to you guys for your contributions and for hitting the like. Hit the like. It really helps us out. So shout out to Jin Ryu, Rafael Gatza, and all the other guys who have been donated so far. All right, so Daniel Dubois, rematch time. Is he a threat?
For a couple rounds, maybe.
Oh.
He's young, he's tall, he's fast, he's got renewed confidence, just like Shannon Briggs did against George Foreman. You notice that I constantly go back and reference fights that have happened before. But once the fight, the bell rang, and the nervous energy was taken out on Lennox's arms and gloves, what happened? The cream rose to the top. And Lennox won.
Oh, the cream.
That's what happened here. Now, I'm not going to say he's going to wail away aimlessly and blow his stamina load like Briggs did, but he'll start off strong with confidence, and then when he starts to realize that that's not going to phase Usyk at all. I don't see him. I'm not going to say he can't dig deep. I'm not going to make these same comments I did about other fighters. What I'm going to say is the fact he's not going to outsmart Usyk. So unless he hits him in the balls again, I just don't see it happening. I know some people, he didn't do that. I get what you're saying, but I just see Usyk knowing the fact that he can bring the power to the body, knowing the fact it's going to be a right hand, knowing the fact it's going to be an uppercut, because the overhand shots are just going to go over Usyk's head, because Usyk's going to fight out of a crouch and be elusive. And I just don't see him outsmarting him. Now, if we do the same thing we did with Usyk that we did with Bud, and we do this another 2 years from now, because Dubois is young, so let's do 3 instead, because Dubois is young enough to wait 3 years, and Usyk's still around. Possibly different story, but because remember, almost 350 amateur fights, 37 years old, heavyweight almost the entire time. That's going to take a toll. But I just believe Usyk's too smart to, especially now that he's been in the ring with Dubois before, so he knows what Dubois can bring. So I don't see what Dubois is going to do, at least with his physicality, to offset what Usyk already knows about him. And
that's a good point.
Like Rick and I said, the fight ended with a jab.
And not for nothing, but Dubois, like you said, he was trying in the first fight. It's not like he was shy or whatever. He was letting his hands go. He just couldn't catch Usyk, or he couldn't catch him often, or with anything big enough to drop him legitimately. So you're right. It's still a big ask, even though.
Or the
Usyk,
key thing to take him out of his game.
Big
Even
ass.
if he did something, it didn't. What he wanted to do.
By the way, speaking of mishearing things, when Chief said the cream rises to the top, I thought he said the Korean rises to the top. I said, I've never heard that expression before.
All I heard was this. All I heard was, if his stamina blows, the cream will rise to the top. I was like, wait a second. What are we talking about?
Innuendos galore.
I mean, I gotta tell you.
Look, man, that's what happened. Exactly what happened to Dubois in the first fight. And so maybe now, 3 fights after that, maybe he's learned a lot. Maybe he's more confident, or maybe he's just gassed up again, only to be deflated. And that's the more likelihood that I would see happening within reasonable time.
Recognize if he has more confidence.
Within reasonable time. Like, if you're talking about 2 years from now, you don't know. But if it's like the next, Usyk's next fight, more than likely, I think I would still just pick Usyk to more or less beat him in similar fashion.
All right. So if Usyk has more confidence or comes in with more confidence, what does that mean? What's the difference? He's gonna throw more punches or what? Like,
did you mean Dubois, or are you saying that if Usyk comes in with more confidence? Because Usyk was already confident to begin with.
Sorry, did I say Usyk? Sorry, I meant Dubois.
He meant Dubois, right?
Okay, I just wanted to
Dubois.
clarify. Because I wanted to know if you're going off the fact that Usyk might be overconfident.
Huh?
No, I mean,
I think he's such a professional. He wouldn't do that. Especially if he's fighting heavyweights.
What I was going to.
Every fight's a danger.
If that's what you meant, that's how I was going to answer that.
I mean, look,
Usyk
he's still human. He's a human being. So, all this praise for a guy who's like being immortal like myself, like, I don't like that shit. Like, fuck Usyk, if you really ask me the truth. But
bullshit. Sorry, I had a cough. I got a bad cough today.
All that aside, I still got to go with Usyk, man. Is Dubois a viable threat? Yeah, but he's just as much as a threat as the other guys you mentioned.
Well, by the way,
basically.
First of all, let me apologize for the cough. I had a bad cough. Recognize I didn't mean to cough between your statements.
Yeah,
but,
you did. You did it on purpose.
And it might have sounded like me saying bullshit, but it's the doctor assures me it's just a coincidence. Anyway, the point is, there's a name missing that some people brought up in the chat as a threat for Usyk, and that is Jay Opetaya, the aforementioned one that we said was a big threat for Beterbiev. Well, what do you guys think? Do you think Opetaya, whether it's at heavyweight or cruiserweight, because again, there was some rumors that maybe Usyk would go back down to cruiserweight. Do you think he's as big a threat as some of the things we already mentioned here before? Either the age
or not at heavyweight.
Do you remember that guy that called in?
Drops, maybe, but not at heavyweight.
Remember that guy that called in, and he would like, he was maybe a Usyk fanboy too much. He was like, oh, Usyk could go down there at cruiserweight and beat Opetaya. I think that's Ty's best chance if he actually was to do that.
Mm-hmm.
At this point of his career, 38 years old, asking him to make weight at 200 pounds. You don't know. Maybe he doesn't react well to that because he hasn't had to in a long time now, right? And he's aging. We've seen this happen in the past where guys do that and they've made a mistake. The only person that I could think of that did that and was successful was Donier, but Donier was he was just a bloated super bantamweight and definitely just a fat little guy at featherweight. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so he's the only one that I could think of that did that with age. But I think the whole time he was always a bantamweight is what he really was.
Yeah, he wasn't taking off a lot of muscle to go back down to bantamweight.
Well, it looks like Usyk is grown into, he's eating himself into heavyweight. And I don't mean that in a fat way. Like I can tell by his physique, the food that he's eating to put on weight. It's a lot of protein, right? So then you're going to ask him to stop doing that, make weight, less protein. He's older. You don't know how his legs might hold up in the later rounds if it gets to that point.
Taking off 26 pounds of mostly muscle, even if it's not chiseled bodybuilding muscle, it's not flab. It's definitely, he's lean at this weight, and he's strong and looks muscular. So you can take off 26 pounds of muscle at 37 years old to go back down to cruiserweight. I'm not saying
he was built like a tight end. That's what he's built like. He's built like a tight end. So
yeah. So I don't see that being a very smart idea for him at his age, especially the money he's made in the last two fights going over to Saudi Arabia. What does he need? He may talk about it. Okay, Canelo talked about going to cruiserweight. Roy Jones talked about fighting Lennox Lewis. A lot of people have talked about things in boxing. Now you start to ask yourself, once you've accomplished everything you have, you're healthy, you're rich, you have everything you need. There's nothing else for you to do. What is the purpose in going back down to cruiserweight? And if he, more likely knowing Usyk, he would go straight for a title shot because that's the kind of guy he is, but he would train in the gym and start to see, okay, my body can't do this. I'm not going to follow through with it. And he would maybe pull out, maybe not, I don't know, but he would not, he would be able to see the writing on the wall of trying to get back down there. I think he's smart enough to do that his pride wouldn't eat away at him and force him into a fight that would be that detrimental to his health. And so, no, I don't see him going to cruiserweight. And of the four that we have on the screen, Father Time's still his biggest enemy.
All right, so are we all in agreement? Let's end this. Is it Usyk's biggest threat? Is it Father Time?
Yes, it is.
Father Time it is then. We've detected his biggest threat. By the way, some people are saying, hold on, before we get to the official result here, MLO860 says, Torres versus Usyk, mustache battle of 2025. What do you guys think about that? Richard Torres.
Oh, my God. Come on.
Hey, he's not a big lummox. He could be fast, ambush style. Maybe Usyk doesn't.
Yeah, so if somebody's going to cause Usyk problems, it's somebody that's fast. He already showed that he can take out these giants.
The ravishing Rick Rude of this era versus Usyk.
Yeah, he's going to start doing that dance there, though.
All right. Well, there you go. Father Time is Usyk's biggest threat. We've got the threat detected right there.
Danger, danger, danger.
There you go.
Danger.
Danger, 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 danger.
There you go. That's danger, danger, danger right there.
Ski.
Well, I got to tell you, Chief, thank you for being on. I know you got to go. We kept him away from his family already for 3 hours. They're probably worried, like, where's Dad? He's locked up in the attic. He's locked up in the attic talking about fucking Lennox Lewis and Roy Jones. So, Chief, thank you for being on, man. Really appreciate it. Everybody else, too, as well, obviously, man. Recognize with the percentages.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you guys. Recognize you're going to... What's next in the next episode? This episode, you were bringing up percentages. Next week, it's going to be like economics nomenclature or something. Like, if he tightens up that GDP, I think he could really make something happen. That's what I'm expecting next week. or next episode. Right?
It's a surprise. It's a surprise. I told you I was going to step up my game.
It's a surprise. All right, Bucho, thanks for being on too, man. People forget Bucho's the co-creator of BDA Boxing, and they think it's all me because he's been MIA for a while. Bucho needs to step it up too. I've been telling him for a while.
It's Christmas. It was Christmas.
Come on,
vacation. You know.
Yeah, that sounds like excuses to me.
A little bit. But so shout out to Recognize Chief Bucho. It was a fun episode. Me and Chief and me rather are going to be doing an episode next because again, there's not a lot going on in boxing. So if there's no big news by the next episode, we're going to be doing a Julio Cesar Chavez retrospective because we mentioned Canelo. Oh, well, I mean, anybody can jump on. I forgot to say, but it was just I was talking with Chief about it, and because Canelo's about to, like we said, he's close to being in his mid-30s. And the big debate now is, has he surpassed Julio Cesar Chavez? So, and also, I want to talk about...
Who's saying that?
I mean, there's some people out there, man. There's
nobody's saying.
Oh, Bucho.
Canelo's an all-time great. There's no doubt about it. But then there's GOAT status.
Yeah.
That's Chavez. Chavez is in that GOAT status conversation.
You should open the phone lines, see if anybody wants to debate you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely. We're going to be doing that. Shout out to Virtuoso for his contribution with the Super Chat. Super Chat via the Buy Me a Coffee. Shout out to Virtuoso for his contribution. He says, Trudeau resigning actually improved your internet connection, BD.
You know what? What the fuck? It makes sense.
I think there's some truth there.
I don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe in coincidences. There might be something to that. Yeah, what a coincidence. Old Trudeau resigns, and as soon as Trudy resigns, well, the connection doesn't suffer anymore, huh? Wouldn't you? I think Virtuoso's onto something. Virtual reality.
They were sabotaging your show the whole time.
That's right. They wanted to keep BDA quiet, but you know what? They can't keep us quiet. We're the voice of the people. Right. What was I going to say then? All right, so that's about it. So shout out again to everybody that donated via the Buy Me a Coffee. Let me just read out the names here because really appreciate your help, guys, when it comes to this. Shout out to Jesus Pardo for his contribution. Double L. Actually, Jesus Pardo was from the previous episode, but I will go with it. Double L, Rafael Garza, Jin Ryu, and the aforementioned Virtuoso. Shout out to you guys. Really appreciate it. Everybody who joined us as well. Everybody who listened to the show, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit the like. Really appreciate that as well. Really helps us out. And let's give a big shout out to everybody in the chat. Yanran Protectorate, Eparokua, M.A.W, Real Talk Combat Sports. Who else? Eparokua, Sergeant. OG Blaze was in the house as well. Rolling with the Punches, LT, the one and only LT. Shout out to LT. What Whiz, Jump Tube, King KO. If I forget anybody, Rapex Drunken Company, 10-4. Nightmare as well in there, MLO 860. If I forgot anybody else, because we really have to go. We've been here for over 3 hours. We'll try to be back as soon as possible. Hey, check out and sign up to Patreon for free. I'm going to be dropping a couple of videos there, especially as it pertains to Benavides Morel. Those type of videos are going to be up there. Also other historical type videos, but go check them out, guys. Hopefully you enjoy them for free, but make sure to sign up either way to Patreon so that we have more members there watching those videos. Take it easy, fellas. Thanks for watching. Take it easy. Whoa.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend you.
I'm disappointed in every one of you.
I kiss you on the mouth.
No, I'm not cool with that. I'm sorry.
One more time.
I'm disappointed in every one of you.
I mean, I'm dealing with degenerate animals.
I'm disappointed in everyone. Totally disappointed in everyone.
All right, come on.
Honestly, I can't do it, man.
I'm disappointed in everyone.
Let me tell you why.
It's gonna be all right, Nicky. Go ahead, shoot.
He just killed a fucking man.
What are you going to do about it?
You're happy because you got nothing. You don't got a thing. You're happy because you got nothing. Lobito. You got nothing.
I want to get out of this rat hole.